What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. All right, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos I did in the past and combine them together into one big video. Today's full story video is going to be about the Avengers, but the Avengers in the Heroes Reborn reality. You see, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, what they did was they had a few properties that were no longer selling. And so you had Marvel cancel those books and push those characters into a brand new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. You did have Marvel bring back old creators to kind of help give those characters a fresh start in that brand new reality, again called Heroes Reborn. Now, unfortunately, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it only lasted for 1 year, but you did have some creators come back to Marvel to work on this Avengers run. Like, for example, Rob Liefeld was the first writer on the actual book. But with that being said, guys, here is the full story of the Avengers in the Heroes Reborn reality. Okay, so we are back with more of our coverage over Heroes Reborn. And so now we're going to pick up with Avengers issue number 1. This, of course, is, as y'all know, the Heroes Reborn universe. Now, just in case we have anybody who's just joining our coverage over Heroes Reborn, let me explain the whole idea what Heroes Reborn was all about. You see, when it came to Marvel Comics, in the late 1990s, they had this crossover called X-Men Onslaught. Now, basically at first, it was an X-Men crossover, but then over time, you did have other characters get pulled into the event. Spider-Man, Punisher, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and the list goes on and on. But here's the thing about this crossover. You see, when it came to X-Men Onslaught, it was also Marvel being able to remove certain characters off the board and move them over into a new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. Here's the reason why. Because when it came in the late 1990s, a few of Marvel titles were no longer selling like they used to. So Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and even Captain America. They were no longer big hitters like they were in the late 1980s. So by 1990s, for Marvel, they're kind of like, hey, you know what? We need a fresh start, a brand new beginning. And so that kind of led into, well, Heroes Reborn. You see, at the very end of the Onslaught event, you had the Avengers and Fantastic Four run into Onslaught as a way to defeat him. But in reality, they were transported into a brand new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. So you only had 4 books take place in this reality: Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and of course, Captain America. All 4 titles were given to us as a fresh start, a brand new reality for these characters. And so we're now going to sit down and cover Avengers issue number 1 to kind of get the full idea of how in the world did the Avengers come together in this reality. And so as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we really do pick up with Loki at first. Now for Loki, it does seem like he does not remember where he is at. Like, he does know he's at Midgard, but he has no idea how in the world he arrived at Midgard. Now for Loki, he wants to go back home to Asgard, but the problem is that he can't go back home. It seems like Asgard is completely gone. And of course, the other worlds that are attached to Asgard are also gone as well. And so for Loki, he's basically stuck on Midgard. He has nowhere to go. Now, he believes all that's being done right now, it has to be Thor's fault. And so his goal right now is to go to Midgard, find Thor, and to hopefully use Thor as a way to hopefully get back to Asgard. And so for Loki, he does go out of his way to hopefully locate Thor, which he is able to do. He finds Thor in Norway. Now here's the thing, because at first he finds Donald Blake, but Donald Blake is not Thor, it seems like, in this reality. It does seem like they're two separate characters. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you do have Donald Blake find this glacier, this iceberg. Inside of it is, of course, well, Thor. He's frozen in time. Now, here's the thing, because for Loki, he does remember the name Donald Blake, but he does not know why. Now, you do have Loki try to go ahead and get rid of Thor right then and there because Thor is frozen. He can't defend himself, but some kind of spell or something basically protects Thor. And so for Loki, he cannot hurt his brother. But you didn't have Donald Blake and his crew begin to talk about the Avengers. Now, for Loki, he's kind of like, wait a second, the Avengers, how in the world do I know them? And why do I hate them so much? Now, when it comes to Loki, he's basically being used as a way to show us the different members of the Avengers team in this reality as they're coming together for the first time. So starting off with the Scarlet Witch. Now, for the Scarlet Witch, she was pulled here by Agatha Harkness because for Harkness, she believed that the Scarlet Witch needed to get out in the world, as a way to help her control her abilities. Now, in this reality, the Scarlet Witch is really powerful. But either way, she does realize or sense somebody else is in the room. Now, when it comes to Loki, he's trying right now to make sure that he cannot be seen. And so he's right now hiding his appearance. But for the Scarlet Witch, she feels like there is someone else in the room, and of course it is Loki. And so you do have him leave before he is detected by the Scarlet Witch. And so that kind of leads us into him now showing off another member of the team, and that would be Swordsman. Now, he does stop by just real quickly and moves on to the next character. Now, we're not really going to look at this other character, but it is him right now working out in his room. But after you have Loki leave that room, you then have Loki head over to the room of Hellcat. Now we also see that Hellcat is technically not alone. You also have Vision there as well. So just like that, we now kind of good look at Vision and Hellcat in this reality as well. Now, of course, the team is going to be led by, well, Steve Rogers, Captain America. Now, in this reality, for Steve Rogers, he had just joined the Avengers. As a matter of fact, we covered his first storyline in this reality. In the middle of that storyline, we saw Nick Fury ask Steve to join the Avengers. Now, for Steve Rogers, his origin story is a tad bit different than his main Marvel Universe one. And let me explain. You see, for Steve Rogers, he never was frozen in time. What happened was that at the end of World War II, he had a disagreement with the president about the idea of bombing Japan because, of course, a bunch of innocent people were killed off with those bombs. And so because of that, you had Steve disagree with the president. And so back then, they're kind of like, listen, we can't have him out there angry at us, the American government. We got to find a way to control him because if we don't, he might get the people on his side. And so you had Nick Fury play with his mind. And so for many years for Steve Rogers, he had believed that he had a wife and a child. But of course, he never did. They were life model decoy robots used that way to help play with his mind over and over again. But either way, he still joined the Avengers. Now we do for a brief moment jump over to Nick Fury, who's having a conversation with Henry Gyrich. Now for Henry Gyrich in this reality, he is the government liaison for the Avengers. Now here's the thing, he kind of hates the idea of the Avengers. Really, he hates the idea of superpower beings, but especially the Avengers. And so he kind of wants to micromanage them, make sure like they're following strict orders every single part of their day because these beings are just superpower beings. Now, of course, he also tries to talk back at Nick Fury like Nick has no idea what he's doing. But while you have the two guys talking to one another, Donald Blake calls and Donald says, hey, listen, you're not going to believe this, but we just found Thor, the god of thunder. Now, because this is a brand new reality, it also means like the beginning of new relationships being built all over again. Like, for example, the Scarlet Witch and Vision, two people who used to date in the main Marvel Universe, and this reality just meeting for the first time. And of course, it's a very awkward first conversation, but again, it's kind of like, okay, we might see these two characters get together as well in this reality. But you do have the two characters head over to the laboratory that belongs to Hank Pym, but also is kind of being used as a way to introduce not just Hank Pym, but also his wife, Janet. And so now you have all these four characters in one room talking to one another. Now, right off the bat, you do have Wanda and also Janet being able to build a bond with one another. Now, there is this small robot that begins to call Hank father and also calls Janet mother. And that right there freaks her out so much. But this small robot is actually Ultron. So we're kind of left to wonder, is there a possibility this small robot might play a role in later storylines down the road? But either way, you do have the Avengers be called for their first mission. And so we get a splash page to see all the different members of the Avengers. So you got, of course, Vision, Hellcat, Scarlet Witch, Swordsman, of course, Steve Rogers, but you also have Hawkeye. And can I say, I do not like the coloring or the color of the outfit on Hawkeye. It just looks so disgusting to me. But either way, here is your Avengers. And so you do have the Avengers head over to Norway. Now, when they do arrive in Norway, they do meet up with Donald Blake. Now, when it comes to Donald Blake, he does, show the Avengers Thor, who's currently stuck in ice. And so you do have Steve Rogers and the rest of the Avengers begin to work together to find a way to free Thor. And it does take like a few pages, and you do have our heroes try different ways to hopefully break Thor out of that ice. But at the end of this section, they do break Thor free. But things go south very quickly here because of Loki, of course. You see, for Thor, just like Loki, Thor is also having a hard time remembering things from his past, of course, who basically froze him in time. But either way, you do have Loki tell Thor, like, look, those guys right there, the Avengers, they are basically your enemies. They're the ones who hurt you last time. And so, of course, you now have Thor wanting to fight against the Avengers. And of course, he does. And so this leads into a small battle between the two parties. Now, the battle actually ends when you have Steve Rogers go out of his way to protect Thor from Loki. And so that tells Thor, wait a second, hold on, you guys are not my enemies. But it's also Thor beginning to remember who his brother is, Loki, the god of mischief. And so you then have Thor say, you know what? It's now time for me to help the Avengers to fight against you. Now, the battle between Thor and Loki is very short-lived. And the reason why, because when you had Loki try to use his spell on Thor, you have Scarlet Witch being able to make Loki's spell backfire. And of course, a portal opens up, sending Loki away into, well, who knows where. Right after that moment right there, you then have Steve and Thor being able to talk to one another. Now, for Steve, he wants to know, like, does Thor know how in the world did he end up in that block of ice? But Thor says he does not remember at all. The only thing he does remember is an onslaught, a great reckoning, and a sacrifice. Now, for me personally, it's kind of like, okay, he's hinting at what happened at the end of the Onslaught crossover. But you do have Steve ask Thor to basically join the Avengers. And of course, he does agree just like that. But to go ahead and close on today's video, we do pick up with, well, Loki, who's now in limbo. But then he's confronted by Enchantress. Now, here's the thing, because she does tell Loki this, that she wants to go after the Avengers, but she wants the Scarlet Witch. And the reason why, because apparently the Scarlet Witch is her daughter. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Avengers. Now, technically, we're covering the Avengers in the Heroes Reborn universe after we work through our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality. So we're also covering Iron Man, Fantastic Four, and of course, good old Captain America as well. Now, with that being said, we're going to cover a two-part storyline where It's going to be these brand new versions of the Avengers fighting against a brand new version of, well, Kang the Conqueror. Now, before we dive into the storyline properly, I kind of want to sit down and re-explain the whole idea of Heroes Reborn. You see, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, they had a few books that were no longer selling. You know, you had Iron Man, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and you also had Captain America as well. Now, when it came to Captain America, he was technically going back up when it came to his sales, but unfortunately, he still got the axe. And so when it came to Marvel Comics, what they did was they pushed those different properties into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn, to kind of give these characters a fresh start, kind of hoping that it would bring fans back into their comics. They brought in Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. Now we're covering the Avengers, and so when it came to Rob Liefeld, he was kind of the guy to watch over the Avenger books, but also the Captain America books as well. That was his two assignments. When it came to Jim Lee, he got Iron Man and the Fantastic Four. And so when it came to Rob Liefeld, he began to give us Kang in his two-part storyline to kind of give us some different ideas of what storyline could possibly go when it came to the Avengers. And so the storyline right here does pick up where our last video had left off at, where basically you had the Avengers fighting against Loki because he was trying to use Thor against the Avengers, but also use the Avengers to kill off Thor. Of course, things always work out for our heroes, but with that being said, you had Steve ask Thor to join the Avengers, which of course he did. And so now as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we see Henry Gyrich right now being very upset about the idea of the Avengers recruiting a god to their roster. He's kind of like, what do you mean that they have recruited Thor to their team? What in the world is going on? Because for Henry, he wants to micromanage this team. He believes that superpower beings should be watched 24/7. Like, he hates the idea of power beings having the right to be superheroes at all in this nation. And so that kind of leads us over to seeing Thor being tested out by Hank Pym. Now, of course, this right here is not really important. It's just showing us how powerful Thor truly is. But while you have Thor going through a workout that Hank Pym had built up for him, you had Vision realize that there's something going on with Ultron here. That Ultron had the ability to upgrade himself without the help of anybody. So when it comes to Ultron, he's now Ultron too, but also he gave himself thumbs. And so for Vision, he's kind of like, that right there is not normal. Like, how in the world is this robot able to give himself upgrades? But while you do have some members of the Avengers kind of watching Thor go through that workout, for the ladies like Hellcat, Scarlet Witch, and also the Wasp, but not the Wasp just yet, they have went out for some, good old shopping and everything. You do have some customers freak out because they see Hellcat and she's kind of like, well, a cat lady, so it's kind of scary to look at. But you do have those characters right there just trying to relax for the moment. We do switch over to Hawkeye and Swordsman. Now, for these two characters, you do have the two characters at the moment right now just going through a training session. But for Swordsman, he kind of gives us a hint that when it comes to Hawkeye, Hawkeye hates authority figures, basically like Captain America, because for Hawkeye, he believes that he should be the one in charge of the Avengers. But while you do have our two heroes going through that training session, Orando's spaceship does appear right over Manhattan. And honestly, I just realized something. Like, for Manhattan in the short period of time of this Heroes Reborn universe, they have gone through a lot. Like, this area was just attacked by Namor and the Atlantis army. And now here they are about to be attacked by Kang the Conqueror as well. But either way, once you had a spaceship arrive, you do have Nick Fury call up Steve Rogers. Now, with him calling up Steve Rogers, all like, hey, listen, I don't care who you think you are, but you still work for the USA, which of course means you work for S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, which also means get your team and get out there and figure out what in the world is going on with that spaceship, because the ladies are already there. Now, for the ladies of the Avengers, they do get attacked very quickly by Kang the Conqueror. Like, as soon as they arrive, bam, just like that, he takes them out. And so, of course, you do have the rest of the Avengers appear. So, Steve Rogers, Hawkeye, Thor, Swordsman, they're all there right now, hoping to bring down this brand new threat. But for a brief moment, we do get two interludes in like 2 pages. The first is that you have Loki right now agreeing to work with the Enchantress to be able to leave Limbo. And the reason why, because the Enchantress wants to bring down the Avengers, but she also believes the Scarlet Witch is her daughter. And so with those two agreeing to work together, of course, you have Agatha Harkness kind of realize something big is about to happen to the Scarlet Witch, the person that she was assigned to watch over. But getting back over to the battle for our heroes fighting against Kang the Conqueror, you have Thor being the first person to go up against Kang. Here's the problem though, because Kang is from the 31st century. His tech is so advanced that even a god like Thor is not really able to take him down. But here is another problem. You see, Thor is reckless. He's not trying to follow any orders that Steve gives him. He believes how powerful he is that he should be able to take down Kang the Conqueror very easily. But you have Kang show Thor like, nah man, I'm on a whole completely different level than you are. And so just like that, you have Thor struggling and you have Steve kind of wondering, what can the Avengers do if they're not trying to follow his orders? But you do have Steve being able to regroup with a few members of the Avengers who are still around. So like Hawkeye and also Vision. And so with those two characters, you then have all three kind of work together to figure out how to bring down Kang the Conqueror. And they were able to get close to him, but unfortunately, you still have Kang the Conqueror being able to win and take down those three characters, including Swordsman as well. But now it's up to Thor, who's not technically down just yet, and you have Thor try one more time because he believes how powerful he is. He should be able to bring down Kang. But once again, you have Kang show Thor like, nah man, listen, again, I am on a completely different level than you are. So for Nick Fury, he begins to freak out. And the reason why, because the Avengers have all been completely defeated by Kang the Conqueror. And so for Nick, he's kind of wondering what to do here. But then he remembers, oh, that's right, we have another superhero team. And that would be the Fantastic Four. The problem is the Fantastic Four are currently busy with Namor at the moment. And so they truly can't help out at all. So now for Nick Fury, it's time for him and S.H.I.E.L.D. to move in. And so getting into the closing parts of this first chapter, for Kang the Conqueror, we do learn that yes, he did come back in time to, well, supposedly get rid of the Avengers, but not for greed, not for his ego, not for revenge, but no, for love. He's doing all of this for the love of Mantis. And so as we enter the third chapter of the storyline, we're really seeing Nick Fury and his S.H.I.E.L.D. agents trying their best to make their way into the spaceship that Kang the Conqueror had appeared with. Now, while you have S.H.I.E.L.D. trying their best to get over to where Kang is at, Kang and Mantis are watching S.H.I.E.L.D. trying their best to break in. And for Kang the Conqueror, we do learn a tad bit here more about him and Mantis. Because it does seem like here that for Kang the Conqueror, he has been trying his best to win the heart of this woman for a very long time. But it does seem no matter what he does, he has not really been able to win her heart like he wants to. And so he's kind of hoping with all this happening right now, he will finally have the heart of Mantis. Now, while you have explained that to us, S.H.I.E.L.D. is currently trying to attack. And for Mantis, she can't believe that S.H.I.E.L.D. is still trying, even though Kang had just wiped out the Avengers like it was nothing. But while you have that going on, we switch over to Janet, and you have her telling Hank Pym like what's going on with the Avengers. Like, hey, they all had just been captured. Now, while you have Hank listening to his wife, you have Ultron begin to act a tad bit different than what Hank had programmed it in the past. And so for Hank, he's beginning to realize there's something different about Ultron. It's beginning to change on its own. But getting back over to Kang's spaceship, we do basically see here right now that the Avengers are being held as captives. But you do have Thor being able to be the one to break everyone free by calling out to Mjolnir. Now, once he was able to call out to his hammer and being able to free the Avengers, you have Steve put Thor in his place. Like, hey, listen. You guys have to listen to me. We have to work together. If you follow my orders, my commands, then most likely we'll then be able to win the battle. But he also promised Thor, like, hey, listen, if you follow my directions, I'm telling you right now, I can give you that big battle you always wanted, that great foe that you want to bring down. Now, back on Avengers Island, we do pick up with Agatha Harkness, and we see her right now just walking through the defenses of Avengers Island so that she'll then be able to see the Scarlet Witch. But here's the thing, though, because this is not the real Agatha. The real Harkness is still back at home, and matter of fact, we see her being attacked, well, by Loki. So the question is right now, was that Enchantress pretending to be Agatha as a way to get into Avengers Island? And really, the second half of this story truly shows that if the Avengers are able to work together, to follow a plan, to use different types of combos, then they will be able to win against almost all their opponents. And so just like that, you have the Avengers being able to overpower Kang the Conqueror. But also what makes the storyline a tad bit more interesting for me is that the Avengers were able to win without their different weapons. But once they were able to receive all their different weapons, just like that, they took Kang down, and Kang was not really able to deliver a single blow to the Avengers. Now, with Kang the Conqueror being defeated, it's kind of like, okay, cool, what to do next? But you didn't have Mantis run over to be on the side of Kang the Conqueror. Because for Kang the Conqueror, he's kind of like, cool, you know what? I lost. With me losing, that technically means I should go ahead and be killed off. So please, Steve Rogers, please, Avengers, go ahead and kill me off. But for Mantis, she begs to keep him alive. And it kind of shows here that she does have some type of love for Kang, even though at first, early on, it did not really show that she did love the man at all. But either way, once you do have Steve say, hey, listen, guys, here's the game plan. So for Kang the Conqueror, we're going to arrest him and hand him over to S.H.I.E.L.D. and call it a day. But while you have the Avengers believing that's what's going to happen, you then have Kang being able to teleport away with Mantis, just like that. Now you have the Avengers realize that Vision is no longer around, because earlier Vision was taken by Kang the Conqueror, but you didn't have Kang, his spaceship, shoot out Vision before it disappears. And so you have the Vision crash right in front of the Avengers. But with that happening, you now have to wonder, is the Vision is even alive at all? And the thing is, the story ends on that note. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so I want to go ahead and continue our coverage over Heroes Reborn and cover another two-part storyline, better known as the Avengers fighting against the Hulk, or really more of the Hulk wrecks the Avengers and also wrecks Avengers Island as well. Now remember, guys, this storyline does take place over in the Heroes Reborn reality, so this is the first time that the Hulk is meeting the Avengers, and well, vice versa. And so with that being said, now before we properly sit down and dive into this storyline, I kind of want to re-explain the whole idea of Heroes Reborn, because just in case we have anybody just jumping into our coverage in this event and don't fully understand what Heroes Reborn was in the 1990s, I kind of want to give them a chance to understand what it was before we dive into the storyline. Now with that being said, in the late 1990s, when it came to Marvel Comics, they had this idea, which was Heroes Reborn, to kind of give characters a fresh start. And those characters were the ones who were no longer selling well over at Marvel Comics. Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and of course, Captain America. Now, technically, for Steve Rogers, he was selling, but like by that point in time, Marvel had made a deal. So unfortunately, he also got cut and put over into this new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. And so with this new reality and with Marvel being able to bring back some old creators, they asked those creators to give those characters a fresh start in that brand new reality, hoping that it would bring fans back into those books all over again, especially for the Avengers and Fantastic Four, their team books. And that's why I said earlier that it would be the Hulk's first time fighting against the Avengers. But with that being said, we have to remember that for the Hulk, he was really more in Iron Man comics, because for Bruce Banner, he was working with Tony Stark as a scientist there. We also learned in that storyline that for Bruce, he was working on the Gamma Bomb. Now, the Gamma Bomb was technically a government project that Hydra found out. Now, for Bruce, he was working with Hydra, hoping that Hydra would go ahead and dismantle the bomb. But instead, they wanted to use it. And so what Bruce did was he took the bomb into the center of the earth, not all the way to the core, but like deep into the earth, and let the bomb explode down there. Now, for the rest of the world, they believed that Bruce had died at that moment. But in reality, he was turned into the Hulk. And so the first time we saw the Hulk in this brand new reality, he was fighting against, well, Tony Stark, Iron Man. But at the end of that storyline, he technically disappeared. Now, he did call a few people he did know very well to say like, hey, I'm not dead, I'm alive, but also I'm the Hulk. But that was really it. He was technically on the run. And so that is why, as we dive into the opening pages of the storyline, we're really picking up with Bruce right now being the Hulk, but on his way over to New York. And technically, he made his way over to New York with the outside parts of it. Now, you do have the military trying their best to like follow the Hulk and kind of wondering what in the world to do here. But at the same time, they really can't do anything because this creature is very dangerous and powerful. Now, for the Hulk, he has no idea that him and Bruce Banner are the same person. And so for right now, for the Hulk, he's currently looking for Bruce Banner and go on a rampage to hopefully find Bruce. But now we kind of put that on hold because we do switch over to Hank Pym. Now for Hank Pym, he's currently in his lab right now working on Vision. And the reason why, because in our last storyline, when it came to our heroes fighting against Kang the Conqueror, Kang beat down on Vision. Well, really his ship did. But either way, Vision got badly injured. So right now for Hank, his main goal is to find a way to save, well, the Vision. Now, while he's trying to do that, he does get some help from Ultron. Now, in our last video, we had discussed the idea that for Ultron, he had begun to upgrade himself. But at this point in the storyline, he's no longer Ultron 2 like he was in our last storyline. Now, he's Ultron 4. Now, for Hank Pym, he's currently in his Ant-Man suit, so he's shrunk down to go inside the body of Vision. But you didn't have Ultron trap Hank Pym inside the body of Vision. And so by the time you have Janet come by looking for her husband, you have Ultron lie to Janet saying like, hey, listen, I have no idea where your husband could be yet. He has been here for a good while. But in reality, Ultron just saw Hank and trapped Hank inside, well, the body of Vision. But getting back over to the Hulk plot line, we do see the Hulk right now nearby this small body of water, where of course he sees the reflection of Bruce Banner, and he believes that Bruce must be nearby. Now, you do have this bird talk to Hulk and say, listen, if you're trying to find Bruce, why not go over to Avengers Island? Because Bruce Banner is over there. Now this bird, of course, it's not your regular bird, but this bird right now is plotting against the Avengers because this is Loki. Because remember, for Loki, he made a deal with the Enchantress because she believes that her daughter is the Scarlet Witch. And so right now, she's trying her best to remove the Avengers, but also get a hold of her supposed daughter, better known as the Scarlet Witch. And really, as we do switch over to the Scarlet Witch, we see her with Agnetha Harkness. The thing is, that's not the real Agnetha. When it came to Loki, he trapped the real one inside a tree. And so right now, this is just the Enchantress pretending to be her as a way to get close to the Scarlet Witch. And so you do have her say like, listen, I feel like there's big trouble coming very soon, and we have to get you somewhere safe. And so you have the Enchantress, again, pretending to be Agnetha Harkness, grab the Scarlet Witch, and go somewhere else away from Avengers Island. Now, for a brief moment, we do jump over to Thor, right? And we see Thor just getting drunk at this bar. And apparently, he's been there all night. And so the owner of the bar is kind of afraid to kick Thor out because Thor is an Avenger. But it's also Thor right now just sitting there drinking a lot, but also kind of like talking to his hammer as well. Now, we do kind of jump over to Steve Rogers and Swordsman right now, going through a training session. Now, while going through that training session, you do have Steve being able to win against Swordsman, but the reason why you have Steve right now training with Swordsman is to teach him like, it's not enough to just take bold moves. You also have to realize what are the consequences of your actions when you take those bold moves. Now, you do have Steve and Swordsman continue with their training session. But now we have to switch over to Hawkeye, and this leads into the good old big battle between the Avengers and the Hulk, because you have Hawkeye right now on, watch duty. And so while watching all these different computer screens, he realized there's something big and green heading their way. And of course, that would be the Hulk. And so you have the Hulk coming here yelling out like, hey, I'm looking for Bruce Banner. Where is Bruce Banner? And so you have the Avengers who are there right now. So Hawkeye, Swordsman, and also Captain America trying their best to fight against the Hulk. Now, I love the idea how Hellcat was there as well before Hulk arrived, but then she dipped out as soon as Hulk did arrive. But either way, by the end of the first chapter of the storyline, what you're seeing right now is a complete beatdown. It's the Hulk being able to defeat that entire Hulk team of the ones who are there right now on Avengers Island. But this leads into the next chapter where it's Thor fighting against the Hulk. And so as we dive into the 5th chapter, we're really picking up with Thor getting ready to battle against the Hulk. Like literally, you have Thor arrive, and most of this book is just Thor and Hulk fighting against one another, and kind of like, okay, cool, we get the idea. Like, these are two characters who are evenly matched for one another. Well, I mean, at first they are evenly matched because right when you have the Hulk believe Thor is down, Thor gets right back up. When you have Thor believe the Hulk is down, Hulk gets right back up. And so either way, it's kind of like, okay, cool. These two characters could fight for a very long time, and we may not see the actual outcome of this battle. Now, with this battle going on, of course, this brings S.H.I.E.L.D. into the picture. Now, for Nick, he gets word about what's happening. But basically that the Gamma Core has been damaged. And with the Gamma Core being damaged, that means the entire Eastern Seaboard could just be wiped out completely. Now, there are only 4 people who know how to handle that kind of bomb. One of them is, Dr. Doom's King of Latveria. One is Tony Stark. Another one would be Reed Richards, and the other one is supposedly dead. But as you all know, he's not dead. It's the Hulk, but no one knows that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline where you have the Hulk and Thor just continue to fight against one another, but by the end of the battle, it's really more of us seeing the Hulk being able to defeat Thor. And so we're kind of left to wonder where could a storyline possibly go next? But here's the thing, because we can't officially just jump into issue number 6 just yet. And the reason why, because it's technically part of a crossover. So unfortunately, we're kind of ending here on a cliffhanger. But okay, so it's time for us to kind of sit down and actually cover Well, the first ever crossover for the Heroes Reborn reality, better known as the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is technically a four-part storyline, but not really. It's kind of weird because all the 6 issues of all the different books were technically used as a way to tell this huge crossover between all the different titles. Now, just in case we have anybody joining us when it comes to our coverage over Heroes Reborn, let me explain what Heroes Reborn was all about. You see, the late 1990s for Marvel Comics, they had some books that were no longer selling. So, for example, Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man also, well, technically, when it comes to Captain America, he was selling, but he was also part of that deal as well when it came to Marvel canceling all their books that were supposedly not selling and giving those characters a fresh start in a brand new reality, better known as Heroes Reborn. And you had Marvel go out of their way to bring back old creators to see if that would get fans back into their books once again. So like Jim Lee, for example. Now, when it came to the Industrial Revolution, this first crossover, it did take place in all the 6 issues of all the different books that were part of Heroes Reborn. So Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and of course Captain America as well. But here's the thing. Most of the actual crossover takes place in Avengers and Iron Man. When it comes to Fantastic Four and, well, good old Steve Rogers, yes, their books are still part of the crossover, but technically not? It's really weird. Let me explain as we dive into Fantastic Four issue number 6. Because Fantastic Four issue number 6 is actually the conclusion to our last video for this series, but also the prologue for the actual crossover. But in the last few pages is the actual crossover. You'll see what I mean here, because as we get into the opening page of the storyline, we pick up with Alicia Masters. Now, for Alicia Masters, by this point in the timeline for Heroes Reborn, she just met Ben Grimm, like literally just met him, and has been trying to have a date with the guy. The problem is right now he's late. And the reason why, because, well, currently the Fantastic Four are in Latveria dealing with Doctor Doom, but also the Super Skrull. And this kind of required us to kind of give you guys a quick rundown about what exactly happened in the earlier issues leading up to this particular moment. Let me explain. So in the earlier issues, as we all know, for Fantastic Four, they got their powers by being hit with cosmic radiation. But here's the reason why they were hit with cosmic radiation. You see, when it came to our heroes, really Reed Richards, he was working on a project where the spacecraft was going to be used to study an anomaly out in space. The problem was that out of nowhere, Wyatt Wingfoot, who worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., just took over the entire project. And the reason why, because apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. and the president agreed to go ahead and destroy the anomaly. Now, technically, when it came to Wyatt Wingfoot, he was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but that was not the real Wyatt Wingfoot. But at that time, we had no idea. All we knew was that he was working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but also working for Doctor Doom. Now, for our heroes, they used a prototype spacecraft to follow Wyatt's men into space to stop them, but of course they failed, but also got hit with cosmic radiation. Now, that space anomaly, it had crashed on Earth in Wakanda. That was the Silver Surfer. Now, you did have Doctor Doom go out of his way to catch the Silver Surfer so that he'll then be able to absorb that energy and give it to himself. But when it came to Wyatt Wingfoot, the fake Wyatt Wingfoot, we had learned that he was a Super Skrull working behind the scenes who also wanted to absorb the energy of the Silver Surfer for himself. And so we're technically all the way caught up now. And the thing is, none of this does anything for the actual crossover that we have to talk about. So don't worry, I put a timestamp down below to tell you where to jump to if you're trying to get into the actual crossover. But this kind of leads into us getting the reason why the Super Skrull is here for. Like, what is his actual purpose on Earth? Well, the reason why, because when it came to the Super Skrull, as we all know, he's part of the Skrull race. But at this point, their home world has been attacked by, well, Galactus. And so it's the Super Skrull kind of warning our heroes all like, hey, you found the Silver Surfer, but you have no idea why he's technically here for, because he's right now trying to find a world for his master Galactus to, well, absorb. And so it's our heroes kind of learning about the Skrull race, but also learning about Silver Surfer and Galactus as well, all in one. Now, with the Super Skrull having the powers of cosmic inside of him, he now has the ability to fight against all our heroes, but also Doctor Doom as well. As a matter of fact, we get that classic throwback to how the Super Skrull is able to use the different powers of the different members of the Fantastic Four as well. But this kind of leads into a very quick ending, and the reason why, because we got to get into that crossover, right? So we do pick up with Doctor Doom. The man got a plan. So you have Doctor Doom inform Susan to use her powers to redirect the energy that Super Skrull is shooting out at the moment over to the Silver Surfer. With him doing that, bam, just like that, Surfer is back on his feet again, getting ready to battle against the Super Skrull. But here's the problem though. You see, as their battle goes on, the reactor underneath Victor's castle is about to, well, explode, it seems like. And so for our heroes, they have to escape. Now for Doctor Doom, he does not want to leave. So he goes down to where the reactor is at to kind of save it, but also gather other things as well. For the rest of our heroes, like the Fantastic Four and Black Panther, they get the heck out of there while you have Silver Surfer and the Super Skrull continue to battle against one another. And so this kind of leads into our heroes heading back home, but technically because for Ben Grimm, he got word about what happened on Avengers Island. So this right here kind of begins the process of the Fantastic Four being brought into the crossover, but also what we saw in our last video for the Avengers. Now for our heroes, they're also kind of wondering, like, did Doctor Doom survive? Now, as they fly away, we do see our heroes being watched by the Silver Surfer. So of course it's kind of like, hey guys, don't worry, he's not gone just yet. He might play a role down the road in a later storyline for our heroes. Now, a little bit after that moment right there, we do pick up with Doctor Doom, but like in a different lab away from the castle that got blown up just recently. And so for Doctor Doom, while being in his lab, he's then confronted by one of his Doom bots who's like, hey, listen, boss, I got some word to tell you, like, what's happening right now back in the States. The whole idea of the Incredible Hulk. Now, in our last video for the Avengers, when it came to the Hulk, he attacked Avengers Island and like wrecked the entire team in a few pages. Literally just beat them all down. But when it came to Doctor Doom, he didn't hear about the Hulk until, well, this exact moment. And so once you have Doctor Doom being able to collect different information about the Hulk, he realized how powerful the Hulk truly is. Now for Doctor Doom, it's him also telling us the Hulk could be more powerful than the Silver Surfer because it's gamma radiation. It's maybe stronger than cosmic radiation. Who knows technically, but you do have Doctor Doom go out of his way to use his computers to kind of figure out the true secret behind the Hulk. Like, who is the Hulk? And so after like a brief moment, he realized or discovers the Hulk is Bruce Banner. And so we kind of get this flashback, right? In this flashback, we kind of get reminded that in the college days for Doctor Doom, he was part of this small circle of other characters we've seen so far in the Heroes Reborn reality. So like Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Hank Pym, Bruce Banner, and Rebel. Now, by this point in timeline, Rebel died in an earlier issue of Iron Man. But anyways, for Doctor Doom, he remembers having this conversation with Bruce Banner. And when it came to Bruce Banner, he even talked back then about creating the gamma bomb. But he only created it as a way to see it not be used at all. Now, Doctor Doom calls Bruce Banner an idiot. Like, so let me get this straight. You're going to create a bomb to never be used at all, to just sit there? And for me, I kind of agree with Doctor Doom because as we saw for Bruce Banner, he did create the gamma bomb, but for the military. And of course, he even then teamed up with Hydra, hoping that it would get dismantled. But of course, it wasn't. It was technically used, but to create the Hulk, as we all saw in the earlier videos of Iron Man. Now, for Doctor Doom, he kind of realized that with the Hulk being out there, all his old college friends, Reed, Hank Pym and also Tony Stark and Bruce Banner will be involved in some type of situation where they all could just be killed off, allowing Doctor Doom the chance to just roll over the world. And so it's him saying like, hey, you know what? I'm going to sit here and wait to see the actual outcome of this event. And so we now jump into the second chapter. That last few pages where Doctor Doom in his lab finding out about Bruce being the Hulk, that was really the prologue for the Industrial Revolution. So now we can fully dive into the actual, crossover, where we do pick up with Avengers issue number 6. Now, when it comes to Avengers issue number 6, it picks up with Bruce Banner breaking into the Baxter building. Now, here's the thing, because Homeboy does not get that far because he is instantly confronted by most of the members of the Fantastic Four, the Human Torch, Susan Storm, and also Ben Grimm. But while you do have Bruce be confronted by these three characters, he tells them like, hey, listen, I just need to talk to Reed Richards. And so you do have Reed appear. Now, Reed does appear. This kind of picks up where our last Avengers video left off at, because when it came to Hulk, he went over to Avengers Island, just wrecked the entire place. The problem is that there is a gamma core there. If that core blows up, boom, there goes the island, but also a huge chunk of the nation as well. And so right now for Bruce, he's there asking for the help of Reed Richards. Again, another callback to the idea that Reed and Bruce and a few other characters were good friends back in college. And so now we do switch over to Avengers Island. Now remember, for most of the people in the world right now, they don't know that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. But this crossover kind of gives our heroes the ability to figure out like, okay, Bruce is the Hulk. Cool. But for right now, no one knows that. But when we do jump over to Avengers Island, we see how badly damaged it was by the Hulk fighting against the Avengers. Now, you do have S.H.I.E.L.D. being able to find Hellcat, Steve Rogers. The thing is, Swordsman and Hawkeye are critically injured at the moment. So for right now, they're not going to be in this actual crossover. Now, when it comes to Nick Fury, he tries to send in a team to deal with the Gamma Core. The problem is that because it's already badly damaged, some of that radiation of the core is already leaking out. So it comes to some people trying to get close to it. Unfortunately, they can't. They die in a matter of seconds when they try to get close to the actual core. And so for Nick Fury, he kind of realized he needs some better tech or something to kind of help out with this situation. Now, again, for Nick Fury, he has no idea that Bruce is the Hulk, but also Bruce right now is getting the help of Reed Richards. Now, that leads into Nick Fury being confronted by Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, he's the reason why the Hulk went over to Avengers Island in our last video and just basically wrecked the entire place. Because for Loki, he's working with the Enchantress. And when it came to Loki, he wanted the Avengers off the board. So did she as well, but for a completely different reason. For Enchantress, she wanted them out of the way to allow her the ability to grab the Scarlet Witch. And the reason why, because she believes the Scarlet Witch is, well, her daughter. Either way, you do have Loki right now confronting Nick Fury. And for Nick, he's kind of wondering, who in the world is this guy here at the moment? Now, we do briefly jump over to the Fantastic Four, and you do have our heroes arrive to Avengers Island. The thing is, when you do arrive, you didn't have our heroes realize how badly the place is damaged thanks to the Hulk, but they don't have any idea what did actually damage this island just yet. But they do find Thor just laying there, still unconscious at the moment. But now it's time for us to get Iron Man into the book as well, because around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Iron Man, he was not technically working with the other characters just yet, the Fantastic Four or the Avengers. And so when he does arrive for Nick Fury, this is the one guy he knows nothing about. He's kind of like, who in the world is this Iron Man guy? Now, for Iron Man, he does want to help out with this situation. And Nick says no at first. But you have Iron Man say like, listen, my boss, Tony Stark, because I'm his bodyguard, he built most of your equipment. So I have all the different codes to technically shut you down. So how about this? Allow me to help you, or I'm gonna go ahead and shut everything down that you're currently using that was created by Tony Stark, including Avengers Island. And so you have Nick say, fine, you get 1 hour, and Tony leaves to go see the other heroes. But let's not forget that it was Iron Man's comics that gave us the Hulk in this reality. Matter of fact, for Tony Stark and for most people, they still believe that Bruce is dead and not realizing that Bruce is the Hulk. So when you have Ben Grimm flying past Iron Man because Thor punched him that hard, and you have the Human Torch go grab the thing, you have the two guys inform Tony like, Bruce is alive. And for Tony, he can't believe what he's currently hearing. And so this kind of leads into the Fantastic Four meeting up with the Avengers. Now, technically, at this point in time, the two teams had already met because when it came to Namor, when he had attacked Manhattan, the Avengers helped out with that situation alongside with the Fantastic Four. But with that being said, with the two teams coming together, you have Reed tell the Avengers like, hey, listen, I brought somebody else who could possibly help us out, and that would be Bruce Banner. The problem is that you have Hellcat being able to realize that Bruce is the Hulk, because of course, both characters had the same scent. Now, of course, that makes Bruce kind of freak out a tad bit. And so while you have everyone discussing like what to do with the Gamma Core, you didn't have Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk to wrap up the second chapter of this storyline. And so now we do switch over to Iron Man issue number 6. Now, with this issue right here, we do pick up with the Hulk just throwing a tantrum. Now, you do have Susan being able to kind of keep the Hulk at bay, which honestly, I'm kind of impressed. And the reason why, because this is still early on in Heroes Reborn. So for Susan, even though she has technically learned how to use her powers in better ways, I'm just surprised to see how strong she is now to be able to kind of keep up a force field to keep the Hulk at bay. Now, they're also kind of hoping that if the Hulk does calm down, he'll turn back into Bruce Banner. But you have Reed say that's not going to happen, because with the whole idea of the gamma radiation leaking out because of the Gamma Core, Bruce will stay as a Hulk until they're able to handle that situation right there. And while you have all this stuff just popping off, you have Loki just being able to keep teasing Nick Fury. I kind of like this a lot because it's just him truly being the god of mischief. And the thing is, Nick Fury is the only person who sees Loki at the moment. So for everybody else are kind of like, hey, who is Nick talking to? And why in the world is he freaking out at the moment? But in reality, it is Nick Fury just talking to Loki. But as we do switch back over to our heroes, you do have Reed and Tony being able to figure out what they have to do to save the day. Now, they say they have to redirect the Gamma Core energy into the Earth core. Now, here's the thing, because while you do have the two characters talking to one another, Reed kind of realized that Tony is Iron Man, but just pretending that, yeah, you're Tony Stark's bodyguard. That's right, cool, But in reality, Reed knows for sure. Now, when it comes to Tony and Reed, like I said, they had realized they had to redirect the energy of the Gamma Core into the Earth core to save the nation from being hit with gamma radiation. Now, I feel like that's a bad idea. But you do have Thor and also Ben Grimm go inside this room to kind of help redirect that energy into the right area. But it kind of leads into Ben Grimm and also really Thor working together to kind of clear a path over to the Gamma Core. The problem is that when they do get close to the Gamma Core, it begins to hit them pretty hard, which means that they're no longer really able to change the direction of the energy of the Gamma Core into the Earth core. Now, while you have Iron Man trying to talk to Reed through one of his many computers, Hulk is just talking so loud that for Tony, he can't hear Reed. And so you have Tony go off on the Hulk, like, Hulk, listen, right now, you're not helping. And technically right now, the only thing you're doing is ticking me off. If you want to help out, get down there and redirect that energy to the Earth core. Because if you don't, 12 million people are going to die very soon. Now, this is Tony kind of talking to the Hulk like Hulk is not really intelligent at all, but it does seem like the Hulk does have some kind of intelligence because his connection to Bruce Banner. But right after you have Tony just go off on the Hulk, Hulk's like, okay, You know what? Let me go ahead and help out. You're right. I should totally help out. It's a quick switch where the Hulk is no longer this man child, but now actually acting like, well, a hero. And this kind of leads into a very rush ending for this chapter, but technically there's still one more chapter left. It's an epilogue, and it gets weird all over again how they kind of did this whole crossover. And you see what I mean here in a moment, but you do have the Hulk being able to help out with the Gamma Core, and the day seems to be saved. And you have the Human Torch being able to absorb all the heat energy that was coming out of the Gamma Core and release it in the air. So just like that, the day is saved. Now for Steve Rogers, he kind of feels like this is the official end to the Avengers. But you have Iron Man say, no, not just yet. And this leads into the epilogue, which is in Captain America issue number 6. Here comes the problem with that issue. Because as we dive into Captain America issue number 6, the first storyline has nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution. Instead, it's more of us seeing Cable teaming up with Steve Rogers. And that's really it. Like literally, you have Cable appear in this reality. And this is Cable from the main Marvel universe who was transported over to this reality. And so it's him right now just helping out Steve Rogers to fight against different members of the AIM organization, but also Steve fighting against some characters he fought in the past in this timeline, but also in the old main Marvel Universe timeline as well. But let's not forget, around this time in the main Marvel Universe, there was no Avengers. There was no Fantastic Four because they had quote unquote died in the Onslaught crossover. So for Cable to be here in this reality, to fight alongside with Steve Rogers, he's kind of like, man, this is great because the guy reminds me of my Steve Rogers from Mine Reality, who I fought alongside with in the Onslaught crossover. But either way, for Steve, he's just fighting against AIM, fighting against MODOK, and also fighting against Baron Zemo as well. But for Cable, as he continues to watch Steve Rogers, he also realized that Steve has another Bucky in this reality. And matter of fact, we met her in our last video for Steve Rogers in this reality. And that would be Rebecca Barnes. Now, let's not forget, guys, when it comes to the Heroes Reborn reality, when it first came out in Marvel Comics, we were kind of left to believe to be a separate reality from the main Marvel Universe. But then over time, with all the different clues popping up left and right, interviews, all that different stuff, we kind of learned that this is actually a pocket dimension in the main Marvel Universe. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now, because for Rebecca Barnes, you could technically say that she is the sister to, well, the Winter Soldier over in the main Marvel Universe, because technically she is a grandchild to, well, Winter Soldier's grandparents as well. But either way, it's just Cable watching Steve and her working together as a team. Now, by this point in the timeline, she's officially Bucky. The last time we saw her, she was not Bucky at all just yet. But really, for the storyline that takes place at first in this issue, it does wrap up very quickly where you do have Steve Rogers being able to take down AIM, MODOK, and also, well, Baron Zemo as well. But right after doing that, you didn't have Cable get pulled back into his reality. Now, he kind of gets this idea that the reality he was just at, the hero he just met, could be his hero from his reality, just lost in a different one. And so his main goal now for Cable supposedly is to find a way to bring back Steve Rogers and the rest of the heroes. But he does go back home. But this leads into literally the last 2 pages of the Industrial Revolution. And like I said, it's just random to me because you get Nick Fury just going back over to his room, right, to finally get some kind of rest, except that is when he's confronted by Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and they're all there to say like, hey, listen, Nick, so we are no longer going to have the Avengers working for S.H.I.E.L.D. The Avengers are now officially going in their own direction. And that's really it. And I'm kind of like, what is the actual point to have these 2 pages kept this one particular issue. These 2 pages could have been used over in the Iron Man issue that you just technically finished the story at. And so, yeah, that's the end for the Industrial Revolution crossover for the Heroes Reborn, their first event in this, well, pocket dimension. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, with that being said, unfortunately for you guys out there, we're going to cover another 2-part story arc. And I get the idea that you guys, may want me to cover more issues in each video, but the thing is about Heroes Reborn is that it was so well connected that you kind of had to jump over to all the different titles for different parts of storylines happening for each of the characters. So unfortunately, when it came to this storyline, you can only cover the 2 issues right here and then jump over to a different book. But either way, we do pick up with Loki. Now, for good old Loki, he kind of realized that he is the Loki from the main Marvel universe, but also that he's currently stuck in this alternate reality. But either way, he wants to get ready to attack Midgard. Now, before he's officially ready to go after Midgard, we do see Loki ask the Enchantress, like, hey, is everything ready to go? And she says yes. And so just like that, it's now time for Loki and her to begin their attack on, well, the Avengers. Now, let's not forget that this comes right after the whole Industrial Revolution storyline. So with that storyline, the Avengers are no longer working with Nick Fury. And matter of fact, when it comes to the Avengers, they're solo now. And you have Tony Stark being the one to kind of pay for everything the Avengers may need. And the Avengers had officially moved away from Avengers Island and had officially moved over to Avengers Mansion, the old home that belonged to Tony Stark's parents. Now, for Tony, we see him as Iron Man. Let's not forget that for most of the world, they don't know that Iron Man is Tony Stark. We're playing with the whole idea that Iron Man is Tony Stark's bodyguard. But with that being said, when it comes to Iron Man, he's picking the last few things up that belong to the Avengers on Avengers Island from Nick Fury. Now, for Tony, he also wants to take Vision, but Nick Fury says no. And the reason why, because when it came to Hank Pym worked on Vision while working for S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, to everybody else, Hank Pym is currently missing. But in reality, for Hank Pym, he's trapped inside the Vision right now. Now, here comes the problem for Hank Pym while being trapped inside the Vision. Now, let's not forget that technically, when it came to Hank Pym, he got trapped inside the Vision by his other robot, better known as Ultron. But while being trapped inside the Vision has all these different security measures just going off left and right, trying to kill off anything it believes that could harm Vision from the inside out. And so currently right now, all those different security systems believe that Hank Pym is some kind of virus or something that's trying to do harm to Vision's body from the inside out. And so you have Hank Pym just trying his best to, well, survive. Now we kind of have to switch over to, well, Agatha Harkness, because in an earlier storyline, we had saw her be attacked by Loki and the Enchantress. And the reason why, because one of their first moves against the Avengers was to get the Scarlet Witch. And the reason why, because to the Enchantress, she believes the Scarlet Witch to be her daughter. And so you have the 2 characters work together to, well, turn the good old lady Agatha Harkness into a tree. Now, her good old cat friend, Ebony, is also trying to free her from, well, her current prison. But for Agatha, what she had to do to escape her current prison was to possess the body of the cat Ebony so that she can go on her way to hopefully save the Scarlet Witch. But now we have to switch over to Hawkeye. Now, when we do, it's really more of Hawkeye in like this training room where he's being able to relive a mission from his past, where him and another character known as the Grim Reaper, they were assigned to go get information about Zemo. The thing is, they got the intel that they were looking for, and they're on their way back to tell Nick Fury that Zemo is still alive. The problem is that Grim Reaper got hit on the way back over to Nick Fury. And so we're kind of left to believe that Grim Reaper had died on that mission. The problem is that before we're able to learn what exactly happened to Grim Reaper, the training session is turned off by, well, Hellcat. And really, it's more of Hellcat just telling us that she was also there on that mission. But again, we don't really get the chance to learn more about that one particular mission. Now we do switch over to Captain America, and the reason why, because you have Steve Rogers currently standing over the body of Swordsman, who was badly injured against the battle against the Hulk. And the thing is, when it came to Swordsman, he believed that Steve Rogers did not like him. And so when it came to their battle against the Hulk, it was Swordsman trying his best to prove something, but unfortunately, he got severely injured. And so is Steve kind of feeling bad about the idea of not telling Swordsman, like, really? I did look at you as a hero. Like, I actually did care for you. And now, unfortunately, here you are just almost lifeless. And so you have Steve tell the man, like, in my mind, in my book, you are a hero. But this kind of leads us into the ending of the first chapter, because when you do have the Avengers just chilling at Avengers Mansion, well, out of nowhere, they hear this knock, this banging on the door. Now, for Tony Stark, he's kind of like, who in the world was able to get past all of my security? Now, you do have Thor answer the door, and it's Wonder Man of the Heroes Reborn reality who just knocks the heck out of Thor. But the thing is, when it comes to Wonder Man, he didn't come alone. Matter of fact, he came here with the Enchantress, and this is her group, the Lethal Legion. And so you have Wonder Man, Ultron 5, the Executioner, and of course, Enchantress as well. Now for Tony, he's kind of wondering how in the world were they able to get past all of his security? Well, that will be because of the Scarlet Witch, who is currently being controlled by the Enchantress. And so as we get into the next chapter, we're picking up with, well, good old Kang the Conqueror. Now, when it comes to Kang the Conqueror, he was defeated in an earlier storyline when it came to the Avengers. Now, after losing that battle against the Avengers, we did learn that he was trying to win the heart of Mantis. But now it's him telling Mantis, like, he wants to go after the Avengers again, but this time to defeat them for revenge, not to win the heart of Mantis. But while you have Kang the Conqueror saying that, well, out of nowhere, you have these two characters be confronted by this mysterious character. And you didn't have this mysterious character go out of their way to turn Kang the Conqueror and Mantis into like pure energy. And so just like that, they were officially taken off the board. But now we're able to switch back over to the Avengers. Now, when we do, we see the Avengers fighting against the Lethal Legion. Now, this battle does not take that long. Matter of fact, you have our heroes being able to win the battle in like 2 to 3 pages, just that quick. You even have good old Steve Rogers being able to take down Ultron, which I found pretty interesting, but at the same time, you can tell that this is the story trying to move on to the next few things it wants to involve in this one particular issue. Now, with their team losing, you had a Scarlet Witch and also Enchantress leave. And so it's kind of like, okay, why in the world would the Enchantress bring together this team that would lose so easily to the Avengers and then leave them behind just like that, but also make sure to grab the Scarlet Witch? Like, what is in her Loki's plan? Now, you do have the Avengers being able to get a hold of Wonder Man and also the Executioner to basically make them prisoners. But for Steve Rogers, he knows where they should possibly go to be held by S.H.I.E.L.D. And so for good old Steve, he has to call in Nick Fury. Now for Steve Rogers, he kind of realized there's something going on with all these different attacks just popping up left and right. Because for Captain America and also the Avengers, they have fought against AIM. They have fought against the Hulk. You also have Loki and the Enchantress and their new Lethal Legion group right there. It's all happening so fast at a very fast pace. And matter of fact, you also had Kang the Conqueror as well. And so for Steve, he's kind of wondering like, what is all their connection? Because it's just very weird how all these different characters are attacking us back to back to back. And so you have Steve ask Nick if he can talk to MODOK, because over in the good old series for Captain America issue number 6, you have Steve and Cable team up to fight against AIM. So right now MODOK is currently a prisoner. But like we saw earlier, when it came to MODOK, while being in prison, he's also confronted by this mysterious character who goes out of their way to turn MODOK into, well, energy, just like Kang and also Mantis as well, leaving us wondering what in the world could possibly be going on. But now we're able to switch back over to Hank Pym. Now when we do learn that for Hank Pym, he's still inside the body of Vision, but he kind of realized where was most of the damage done when it came to Vision, when it came to Avengers fighting against Kang the Conqueror in the earlier storyline. Most of the damage took place in the brain part of Vision. Now, once you have Hank Pym arrived, he's kind of like, okay, cool. It's now time for me to go ahead and get to work. Except out of nowhere, he's then attacked inside the mind of Vision. So now we're kind of left to wonder what happened to Hank Pym. But now we have to switch back over to Captain America, because for Steve and also Nick Fury, they're on their way to pay a visit to MODOK, who is currently a prisoner to S.H.I.E.L.D. Except when they arrived, you have our heroes be informed that MODOK is no longer there. And the reason why, because, well, as we saw earlier, a mysterious character took MODOK away, turning him into energy. Now, for Nick and also for Steve, they have no idea what happened to MODOK. All they have right now is a clue, where basically the shackles that were being used on MODOK are still there and they're currently locked. And so for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick and also Steve, they're kind of wondering like, what exactly happened here? Now, as we do get back over to the Avengers, you have Agnetha trying to pay them a visit to warn them what exactly is going on. The problem is that Agnetha is taken out by an unknown force. And then you have the Avengers be confronted by another group of villains. And this time it would be the Masters of Evil. You got Black Knight. You got Radioactive Man, you got Claw, you got Melter. You also have Whirlwind as well. And I'm kind of wondering if this is a completely different Whirlwind, because there was another one, but he was killed off over in Iron Man comics in this reality. But either way, for our heroes, they're kind of like, great, another super villain team. Like, what in the world is going on here? But then a missile is shot at them. Now, as we do get over to the end of this storyline, we do learn like who was this mysterious character just going around absorbing different people. Well, it was Loki. And so we see Loki right now paying a visit over to Wonder Man and also the Executioner. And you have Loki go out of his way to turn them into, well, energy. And so just like that, they are gone. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality, we do pick up with Avengers issues number 9 through 11. Now, I'm not going to cover issue number 12, and the reason why, because issue number 12 is really more part of a crossover for the Heroes Reborn books. So Iron Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and Captain America. So I'm going to save that crossover for a different video. But this does kind of build into that crossover, but also build up to the idea of the possible end to the Avengers run. Because as we all know, when it came to Heroes Reborn, each title only got 12 issues, and that was really it. After that, all the books were canceled and you had all the heroes go back into the main Marvel universe. And you know, I probably should just go ahead and mention this because it has been a while since we last sat down and officially talked about the birth of the Heroes Reborn reality, but also just in case we have anybody joining our videos, when it comes to the Heroes Reborn reality for Marvel Comics, it came out of the idea of the Onslaught crossover. Let me explain. You see, when it came to Marvel Comics, they gave us Onslaught, this massive Avengers X-Men crossover. You had Spider-Man in there, Punisher, all these different characters. But you had Marvel use that crossover as a way to remove some characters from the main Marvel universe. And the reason why? Because their books were no longer selling. And so what Marvel did was they brought back old creators like Jim Lee to come back and work on some titles to kind of bring life back into those characters. And so just like that, you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. They went into Onslaught after he was defeated, but you didn't have those heroes be teleported into a different reality. Now, when it came to the X-Men and other characters who were left behind in the main Marvel universe, they believed the heroes had died. But in reality, they were just in a brand new reality called Heroes Reborn. And so this storyline does pick up right where our last video had left off at. And technically this storyline is coming out of the Industrial Revolution. And the reason why I'm bringing that up because when it comes to our heroes, they moved away from Avengers Island and moved over to Avengers Mansion. And matter of fact, the Avengers are no longer working for S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, in our last video, when it came to the Avengers, they were being confronted by all these different group of villains just left and right. And the thing is, at first, it did seem like our heroes might be in trouble, but you did have our heroes being able to just rebound and defeat those guys very easily. And so as we get into the opening pages of this storyline, we do pick up with our heroes fighting against the Masters of Evil. And the thing is, the Masters of Evil should be somewhat of a challenge for the Avengers. But the thing is, they're not. And matter of fact, you have the Avengers being able to easily defeat them in the first 5 pages of the storyline. Now, once you do have our heroes win the battle, but this kind of leads into what we're going to see throughout the entire storyline, where it's the Avengers just constantly going through inner group issues. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for Thor, for example, he hates the idea of how the Avengers work. He loves the idea of being on the team and protecting Midgard, but he hates the idea that they don't kill off these supervillains once they are defeated. Because for, the Avengers, they are your classic heroes. Once they do beat the bad guys, it's kind of like, okay, cool, you know what? Let those guys go to jail. If they do break out again, we'll just stop them again and send them back to jail. But for Thor, he's kind of like the 1990s heroes. Hey, listen, we just beat this guy and I want to make sure he stays down. So let's go ahead and kill him off. Of course, you do have Steve Rogers say no, because the Avengers are not killers, especially when he is the leader of the team. And so for Thor, he hates that. And you have Thor just fly away. But for Steve Rogers, he can't really focus on Thor at the moment. And the reason why, because the Avengers keep getting attacked by all these different group of villains. And so for Steve and also Tony, they want to figure out what exactly is going on here. Because when they do ask Black Knight, he's kind of like, hey, that's our job. We fight against the Avengers for fame, for money, and the babes as well. And so for Tony and Steve, they're kind of like, there's something going on here. Now, behind the scenes, you have Loki right now just making his big game plan. And that's the thing about Loki. He has been working behind the scenes the entire series. But right now, it's him reminding us that with the Heroes Reborn reality, Loki realized, one, they're in a different reality, but two, there's no Asgard, there is no Odin. So right now for Loki, the only person standing in his way would be Thor. And so with the help of the Enchantress and also the Scarlet Witch, he believes he should be able to take out Thor and gain godlike powers. But now we do switch back over to Iron Man. Now for Iron Man, he's confronted by Janet. And when it comes to Janet right now, she's looking for Hank Pym. Now, we already know where he's at. He's currently trapped inside the body of Vision because when it came to Hank Pym, he was trying his best to repair Vision, but Ultron trapped inside the body of Vision. And so right now you have Hank Pym, Ant-Man size, just trying his best to find a way out of the body of Vision. Now, when it comes to Tony, he remembers that earlier in our last video, they had fought against Ultron and another group of villains that he was with. Now, also, when it came to the earlier parts of our storyline, Ultron was acting a tad bit weird, but also going out of his way to upgrade himself as well. But it was Ultron who did trap Hank Pym inside the body of Vision. And so for Tony, he's like, Ultron went crazy a tad bit. Also, Hank Pym was last working with the Vision, or working on the Vision. I think I have an idea where Hank could be at. But right after you have Iron Man and Janet leave, you did have Loki and the Scarlet Witch appear at Avengers Mansion. Now, the Scarlet Witch is only working for Loki right now because in the earlier storyline, when it came to the Enchantress, she only agreed to team up with Loki to basically get the Scarlet Witch because she believed the Scarlet Witch was her daughter. And so now you had a Scarlet Witch on the side of Loki right now helping him out. When it comes to Loki though, what he's doing at the moment is absorbing the life energy of all the different villains that the Avengers had just defeated at the very beginning of the storyline, make himself more powerful. Now for Hank Pym, with him being inside the body of Vision, he was trying his best to repair the body of Vision after Vision got his butt whooped by Kang the Conqueror. Now, here's the thing, because while inside the body of Vision, you had Hank realize most of the damage has been done in the memory core of the Vision. And so you had Hank go over there and try his best to plug himself in to fix the problem. Now, in our last video, he was knocked out after doing that. But in this video, once he does wake up and being able to replug himself back into the mind of Vision, he realized somebody has been sending information that the Vision has collected over to Avengers Mansion. Of course, the home to Tony Stark. And so for Hank, he's kind of like, that seems a tad bit weird. But you also have Hank being able to cut off that connection. Now, once he does, he has to get the heck out of there, which he's able to do. But this kind of leads into the idea of Hank Pym now being confronted by Janet, Nick Fury, and also Tony Stark. Now for Nick, he wants to know how in the world did Tony and also Janet were able to sneak into the helicarrier. As we all know, when it comes to Tony Stark, he built the helicarrier for S.H.I.E.L.D. And most of the tech S.H.I.E.L.D. uses came from Tony Stark. Now let's not forget, the world believes that Iron Man is Tony Stark's bodyguard. They don't know that Tony is Iron Man. But with all that being said, for Nick Fury, Hank can't leave. He wants to know what exactly happened inside the body of Vision. Now, of course, for Tony, that's not going to happen. So for Tony, he wants to take Hank with him. And for Nick, he wants to stop Tony from doing that. Now, you do have Janet go ahead and change into her wasp size to grab Hank to get the heck out of there. Now, for Iron Man, he realized Vision is about to blow up. And so he grabs the body of Vision, goes outside the helicarrier to allow the Vision to blow up away from the helicarrier. But you do have Hank, Janet, and also Tony leave, but you have Tony call us Steve Rogers. But now we have to switch back over to Thor. Now for Thor, he's then confronted by the Enchantress. Now here's the thing, because for the Enchantress, she reminds Thor what Loki told him, in the first issue of the series. You see, in the first issue, once you had the Avengers being able to free Thor, Loki told Thor the Avengers were his enemies. Now, of course, for Thor back then, he realized his brother was lying. But now it's the Enchantress saying like, no, Thor, he wasn't lying to you. Like, look, the Avengers, look at them. They are not what you stand for. The idea of not killing off your enemies who are evil is completely wrong. It's her just playing mind games with Thor and being able to get him onto her side. And of course, you had the two characters kiss one another. But now we have to switch back over to Steve. Now for Steve Rogers, he went over to the New York hospital. And the reason why, because he's checking in on the swordsman. Now, the swordsman was badly injured by the Hulk in a previous storyline. And so while trying to recover, he was there at the hospital. Except when Steve gets there, swordsman is gone. Now you do have Steve question the nurse. And the nurse says like, hey, listen, the head nurse came in here to check in on him. And she realized he was gone, but all she saw was blue smoke. And that is very similar to what happens to other people once you have Loki absorb them as life energy. And so for Steve's wondering what in the world is going on here. Now we do learn here that it was Loki who was collecting information from the Vision while being at Avengers Mansion. The problem is that Vision is gone now. And so for Loki, he's very upset about the idea that he's no longer able to collect information from, well, the Vision. But you then have Loki realize the Scarlet Witch had disappeared. And when it comes to the Scarlet Witch, what she did was she went over to Hellcat to warn her about something. The problem is that you have Loki being able to stop Scarlet Witch very easily. Now, for Hellcat, we kind of see here, and for me, it's kind of out of nowhere, that she hates the way she looks. And so you have Loki say, hey, listen, Hellcat, I can make you look better. Matter of fact, how about this? I'll put your soul inside the body of the Scarlet Witch. You'll have her body, her powers, and her beauty. There you go. And so just like that, you have Loki being able to bring Hellcat over to his side, but putting her in the body of the Scarlet Witch. Now, this kind of leads into what I feel like some bad writing, and let me explain. Because you do have our heroes go over to Avengers Island, and they find the gamma reactor. Now, the last time we saw the reactor, it was shut down back in the whole Industrial Revolution crossover. But apparently, somehow, it has been reactivated. But also, it's kind of like this reality portal, because it's now bringing in characters into this reality, different versions of these characters. So the Grim Reaper, the Living Laser, and the Super Adaptoid. Now here's the thing, because the Grim Reaper, Living Laser, they had appeared earlier issues of the Avengers and Iron Man books in the Heroes Reborn reality, but the Super Adaptoid has not. So the whole idea the heroes know about it is kind of weird. They're like, oh my God, it's the Super Adaptoid. I'm like, y'all never met that character at all in this reality. Now, you do have Iron Man being able to stop those three characters from coming into this reality. But then the reactor begins to build up all over again. But it does release somebody else out of the reactor, a second Thor. And so as we get into the next chapter, this is where you kind of had the story kind of get a tad bit confusing. I mean, not really, but like gets a little weird. Let me explain. You see, when it came to the whole idea of Heroes Reborn, you had different heroes, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four of the main Marvel Universe go into Onslaught, but been transported over to the Heroes Reborn reality, but given new lives. Here's the problem now, because this Thor right here is from the main Marvel Universe, because he tells us that he does remember the Avengers, but he remembers a great battle where they all had fallen, they all had died. Now for me personally, he's talking about the Onslaught crossover, which means that the Thor we have been seeing is a Thor that was just created for this reality, to be alongside with our heroes. So the question is right now, why in the world did that happen? Now, once you do have our heroes tell Thor, our Thor here, like, hey, this is not Valhalla. Like, this is not the afterlife. But you know what? Let's head over to the Baxter building to meet up with Reed Richards to kind of get a better idea of what in the world is currently going on. But now we have to switch back over to, well, Hawkeye. Now for Hawkeye, he's kind of upset because, well, his close ally, Swordsman, had just disappeared. And also for Hawkeye, he kind of hates the way Steve Rogers runs the team. Now, for Hawkeye, he's then confronted by Loki. And you have Loki tell Clint, like, well, listen, if you hate the idea of the team, why not go ahead and join my team? Now, Hawkeye knows that Loki is a bad guy, but you then have to be confronted by the Scarlet Witch. But let's not forget, this is not the Scarlet Witch. This is Hellcat in the body of Wanda, but you do have her being able to play some mind games on Clint, but also kind of, use some magic and kissing as well to kind of get him to join their side. Now we do switch over to the few members of the Avengers who paid Reed Richards a visit. Now, when it comes to Reed, he has been kind of wondering like, is this reality even real? And the reason why I'm saying that because for Reed, he had found different clues of the possibility that they are not really real at all, or possibly they belong to a different reality, especially when it came to our last Fantastic Four video, when you had our heroes go into the negative zone, but you had the Watcher pull our heroes into the main Marvel universe to see different points in time where they had lived lives in the main Marvel universe. Like, for example, for Reed Richards, he has saw when Fantastic Four have fought against the X-Men. But for this Reed Richards, there is no X-Men in this reality. But either way, it's him telling the Avengers the Gamma Core is no longer a Gamma Core. It's now like this wormhole to different realities. And that right there is very confusing. But it's also Reed kind of wondering, is this world even real? Because who in their right mind puts a Gamma Core right in the middle of Manhattan? But now we got to switch back over to Thor and also Enchantress, who meeting up with Loki. Now, when it comes to Loki, it's him right now telling Thor like, hey, listen, my game plan is to bring Asgard back to Earth, to rule over Earth, to bring back the old ways. And the thing is, this Thor, he wants that because this Thor is, yes, the Heroes Reborn Thor, but we can kind of tell he's from the Viking days. So, of course, he loves the idea of violence. And so the idea of going back to the old ways of how the world used to work, he agrees with Loki to bring back Asgard to rule over Midgard. Now, of course, Loki is a liar, and Thor knows that. But you have Loki say, listen, if you just help me get the power I need, I will do everything we need. But if I go out of line, then yeah, you may bash my head in with your hammer. Now we do switch over to Nick Fury and also a few S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Now for Nick and his S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, they go over to the ship that belongs to Kang the Conqueror. Now in our last video, we saw Loki just basically absorb the life energy of Kang, but also his loved one, Mantis, as well. And so for Nick and the agents, when they get onto Kang's spacecraft and you have Nick being able to look at old information, he's kind of like, oh, okay, so Kang the Conqueror and Mantis are most likely dead because of Loki. You know what? I gotta get this information over to the Avengers. Now you have this meeting going on between the Avengers, but also like Nick Fury. Now for Hank Pym, is him telling us that basically when it came to the Vision and its memory core, whoever was collecting that information, of course we already know it's Loki, they were using that information as a way to pull out different villains the Avengers had fought over time with the Gamma Core. Because again, with the Gamma Core being this reality wormhole, whatever, now that person, Loki, has the ability to pull out different versions of different people that the Avengers had fought against over time. Now, you do have Nick Fury arrive. And when Nick arrives, he gives our heroes two updates. The first is that what happened to Kang the Conqueror, the idea that Loki had killed off Kang the Conqueror. But also you have Nick informing the Avengers there's the Thor right now just wrecking part of the city at the moment. Of course, that's the Thor that's currently working with Loki, not the good Thor who's currently with the Avengers. But right after you have Thor leave, you then have the Scarlet Witch appear, except this is not Wanda. We already know this is Hellcat in the body of Scarlet Witch. But the thing is, the Avengers don't know that. We also learned here that for Steve Rogers, the Scarlet Witch was supposedly his spy the entire time, which for me is pretty wild because basically, he's saying that she came to him after the Enchantress had approached her all the way back in Avengers issue number 4. But she was gone for a good while. But either way, you didn't have Steve realize this is not the Scarlet Witch. Like it is, but it's not her in control. It's Hellcat in control, who's now on the side of Loki. You also have Hawkeye appear as well. And with Hawkeye being there, he's also on the side of Loki. So you now have Scarlet Witch. You also have Hawkeye. And you got evil Thor arriving there as well to fight against the Avengers. And at first, our heroes are really struggling at the moment. Now, luckily for our heroes, their Thor, the good Thor from the main Marvel universe, comes back to fight against, well, this fake Thor, the Heroes Reborn Thor. Now, while you have our heroes fighting against one another, Loki in his astral form sees what's happening. And so you didn't have Loki go out of his way to head over to the reactor core. What you have Loki doing right now is just absorbing all that energy for himself. This energy that's technically like, universal energy that leads into other dimensions. But either way, it now allows Loki to become this godlike being. But this kind of leads into the final chapter of the book, which honestly, I kind of like here. And here's the reason why, because it's hilarious to me. Because once you have Loki now being at this god tier level, you didn't have Thor, the Thor from Heroes Reborn reality, and also Enchantress run over to Loki like, okay, you got the power. This is great. Let's go. He's kind of like, yeah, listen. All this power is for myself, and I'm not going to use that power as a way to give you what you guys want. And so you didn't have Loki just go out of his way to hit the fake Thor and also Enchantress with all the new energy that he had just gained. I'm kind of like, yeah, we all saw that coming because it's Loki. He's the god of mischief. Now, this kind of leads into what I call a tad bit of cleaning up because, this next storyline is going to be a crossover between all the Heroes Reborn books, Avengers, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, and of course, Captain America. And so with all that being said, you do have the writers trying to get things somewhat back to normal, starting off with this next section. Like, for example, the Scarlet Witch. You have our heroes look into a mirror. When they do, they see Hellcat to tell them like, hey, that's not really the Scarlet Witch. Like, it is her, but like her body right now is not in her own control. It belongs to Hellcat. But you didn't have Agatha Harkness appear. And the thing was, she was Wanda's protector, but she was turned to a tree by Loki. Now, she was able to possess the body of her familiar, a cat better known as Ebony, and she basically used the body of the cat to get over to Wanda, but also over to the Avengers. And so just like that, we got the return of Agatha Harkness because with the Enchantress realizing that she got played by Loki, of course, she's now trying her best to help out the Avengers. Now for Hawkeye, he's on the sideline for the moment because the magic that was used on him might do permanent damage if the Enchantress tries to remove it. Now, when it comes to the main Marvel Universe Thor, he kind of realized the other Thor, the Heroes Reborn Thor, kind of reminds him of Hercules in some type of way. But you do have the two Thors agree to work together alongside with the Avengers to kind of stop Loki. Now, they head over to the Gamma Core because they realize the Gamma Core must be the source of Loki's power. The problem is that when they try to break it with two Thors by their side, they're unable to do anything at all. But here's the thing, because you didn't have the heroes realize that if they try to do anything else to the actual core, they might rip a hole in time and space. So technically, they do need a new game plan here. Now for Loki, we just see him right now just going on a rampage throughout Manhattan, just kind of showing off his powers. But then out of nowhere, Loki is then confronted by Odin. So it's kind of like, wait a second, how in the world is Odin here at the moment? Because for Loki, he kind of realized that this reality is not their reality, which also means there is no Asgard. And so he's kind of wondering how in the world is Odin here at the moment? But you do have Odin fight against Loki. The thing is, Odin is using the hammer that belongs to Thor. So you're kind of wondering, like, what exactly is going on here? Now, for Odin, he continues to play mind games with Loki. And the reason why I'm saying that because he tells Loki that Thor's hammer is the most powerful weapon in the entire universe, all 10 realms. Now, that right there could be correct, yes, but there is a reason why Odin said that for. It's Thor right now pretending to be Odin. It's the fake Thor because it's the Scarlet Witch and also the Enchantress and Agnetha using their magic to make it seem like Loki is fighting against Odin, but in reality, he's fighting against Thor. Now, when it comes to their battle, it's right now draining the energy of Loki that he's currently gaining. The rest of the Avengers, what they're trying to do is cut off that connection that Loki has right now to the Gamma Core. Because then, while you do have fake Thor fighting against Loki, once that power is completely drained, then the heroes should be able to go toe-to-toe with him. Now, at the very last second, we do see fake Thor be hit really hard by Loki. So this fake Thor is on the verge of death very soon, but he does head over to where the Avengers are at. And this kind of leads into what I say a rush ending, because when he does get there, you do have Nick Fury use S.H.I.E.L.D. as a way to attack Loki. You also have Steve Rogers attack Loki as well, to give Iron Man enough time to complete what he's trying to do, which is absorb the energy the Gamma Core is releasing and reverse that energy to use it as a weapon against Loki. So by the end of this section, you do have the Hammer of Thor, really all the different attacks the Avengers could have, including the energy that Iron Man had just absorbed right at Loki. So we're kind of left to believe that Loki is officially dead. Now, we already know that's not the case at all. But for the time being, our heroes believe the day is saved. But there is one more thing we got to talk about. It's the idea of Thor dying. Let me explain. Because when it came to Thor, as we all know, when the Heroes Reborn reality was made, you have the different heroes go into this reality and just begin new lives in its new reality. But as we all know, this reality was made by Franklin Richards. So the question is right now, why couldn't he originally do the same thing with Thor? Because we have two Thors. We have the Heroes Reborn Thor and, well, the main Marvel Universe Thor. And we're kind of left to believe that maybe, just maybe, because Thor is a god, Franklin was not really able to bring Thor into this reality at first as a brand new fresh start for him. They had to create a copy of Thor to be in this reality. But either way, fake Thor dies off. Now, the way this story kind of wraps up, you're kind of left to believe the possibility that, okay, they're going to give us a year or two of Heroes Reborn. The thing is, they don't. Because right out of this storyline, you had two more crossovers. You had the one for Heroes Reborn and the one that kind of led the heroes back into the main Marvel universe. Now, this reality did stay around actually, and you had Marvel give us a bunch of one-shots to kind of tell us different stories after the heroes had all left. But either way, Galactus is coming. Like, one more time for y'all. Galactus is on his way to Earth to devour it. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to cover the next big crossover for the Heroes Reborn reality, better known as Heroes Reunited. Now, Heroes Reunited is really more the idea of our heroes coming together because, well, Galactus is coming. And the thing is, in our last few videos that we had covered for the Heroes Reborn reality, we kept seeing the idea of Galactus on his way, like small glimpses here and there, like, okay, he's coming again, he'll be there very soon, but now it's time for him to come to Earth. But for our heroes, they kind of ignored all these different hints of the idea of Galactus, but the problem is kind of like, no. You guys now need to get ready because here he comes. And so in today's video, we're going to cover the prologue and also part 1 of Heroes Reunited. And really, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up with the Silver Surfer. Now, for the Silver Surfer, let's not forget that he's kind of the reason why our heroes, the Fantastic Four, were able to get their abilities, but also, like, he was captured by Doctor Doom. Now, with him being captured by Doctor Doom and having the Fantastic Four and also Black Panther going out of their way to save his life, it's kind of him feeling bad about the idea of Galactus heading over to their planet. Now, for Galactus, he already sent over his heralds to kind of get the Earth ready for his consumption. But for the Silver Surfer, it's him kind of wondering how can he save his friends, or possibly how can he save the entire planet. And so even though the other heralds have made their way over to the Earth, it's him saying now, like, okay, I need to get there in a hurry to kind of help them out, because the heralds are really powerful and our heroes don't truly stand a chance against the heralds of Galactus. It's kind of sad to see, because for the Fantastic Four, they're kind of just hanging out and minding their business. Like, for example, Alicia Masters is making a sculpture of Ben Grimm, kind of showing like their relationship has grown a lot. And it's kind of cool to see, but at the same time, you already know by the end of this series, this right here won't technically matter anymore, but we do shift over to Reed and Sue. And for Reed and Sue, it's really important here because it's Susan telling Reed, like, hey, I'm pregnant. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Susan, she was told in this reality that she was not able to have children. But the thing is, she went over to the main Marvel universe and she saw her, original version of herself with a son, Franklin Richards. But once she came back to her supposed reality, is her kind of realizing, like, okay, I want to be a mother. And right now, she's pregnant. Now, you do have Susan go ahead and call up Johnny Storm and say, hey, brother, we're having dinner. We got some big news. But for Johnny Storm, he's kind of in this mindset right now where he's just upset about the idea that they had to leave the Inhumans behind because he fallen in love with Crystal. And so because of that, you have Johnny right now just in the training room, just going extreme levels to kind of keep his mind off the idea of Crystal. But the problem is, once he does finish his training session, his mind goes straight back over to who? Crystal once again. But now we have to shift our focus back over to Terrax. Now, when it comes to Terrax, it's him right now just arriving on Earth. He's one of the heralds of Galactus, and he was tasked to get the world ready for the consumption of Galactus, which means like take out any possible threats that could take down Galactus, like the Fantastic Four, because the Silver Surfer told Galactus about them. And so for Terrax, he can see like, yeah, y'all got some cosmic powers in y'all, but like, hey, it doesn't matter. You still gotta go. And so you do have our heroes try their best to fight against this powerful being who's not really easy to take down. And it kind of shows here because, yeah, for Susan Storm, she is able to put a force field around her to protect herself. But the problem is, like, for Terrax, this man knows what to do. And so he shakes the ground underneath her as a way to attack her. And so just like that, he's showing that no matter what, he has different ways to attack people. Now, when it comes to Reed, of course, he gets very upset about the idea of his girlfriend being attacked at the moment, especially now because she's pregnant. But the problem is, Reed's not powerful enough to take on a guy like Terrax by himself. So, of course, he's also taken out very easily. Now, when it comes to Susan, she tries her best to call up her brother, the Human Torch, who's back at the Baxter building. The problem is that for Johnny, he is not looking at his communicator. Why? Because again, he's still madly in love with Crystal. He missed Crystal so much that he keeps looking at pictures of her. And while you have everything popping off over there for Galactus, this man is truthfully on his way over to the Earth. And so for Galactus, while being in his spacecraft, he looks over data about the Earth. And for this guy, he's getting really hyped about the idea of consuming the Earth because he realized there is a lot of life energy there. And so for him, he's kind of like, this is perfect. All that life energy for myself is pretty great. But as we do switch back over to Johnny Storm, it's him realizing that things have truthfully popped off back at the park with the rest of the Fantastic Four. So you do have Johnny head over there to kind of help them out. Except when he does arrive, you have him and Ben being able to work together to take down Terrax. Now, right after you have our two heroes being able to, take down Terrax for the time being, you then have the two go look for Reed and Susan. Now, they do find Reed. When they find Reed, they are then informed about the idea that Susan is pregnant. So, of course, everyone is excited, but here comes the big problem, though, because yes, they did defeat Terrax. But like I said earlier, the rest of the heralds of Galactus were also sent over to the Earth, which means here comes Firelord and also Plasma, two other heralds of Galactus. And of course, for our heroes, it took a lot for them to just take down Terrax. But now they gotta fight against two more heralds of Galactus. And this leads into Heroes Reunited Part 1. And so as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we do pick up with Dr. Doom. Now, this is Dr. Doom arriving at New York City, arriving at the Laverian Embassy. And the reason why, because inside this place, he had his robots work on a brand new armor suit. Now, this armor suit will allow him the ability to siphon off the energy of somebody who has cosmic powers. Like, I don't know, Terrax, or Plasma, or Firelord, or hey, maybe Galactus. But it's Dr. Doom saying like he believes it's officially ready. Now, let's not forget, when it came to Dr. Doom, he was confronted by a future version of himself that tried to warn him about their future and handed him a card that held information about their future. But for Dr. Doom, he took that card and added it into his armor suit. But now we're kind of able to switch over to the Fantastic Four, as you do have the Human Torch in the Thing wanting to fight against the Heralds of Galactus. Now, of course, this is a bad idea because it took the entire team to defeat just one of the Heralds of Galactus. But now you're talking about three of them. Now, for Reed, he tries his best to kind of talk everything out. But with the idea of Terrax being a hothead character and also Ben Grimm as well, of course, it does lead into a battle. But like I said, these guys are heralds of Galactus, so technically our heroes do not even stand a chance against these guys. But luckily for our heroes, you do have the Silver Surfer arrive at the very last second. And this is really more of the Silver Surfer kind of telling us, the readers, but also the other heralds of Galactus, that he looks at the Fantastic Four as not just heroes or just powerful beings, but also as his friends. Now, you do have Terrax kind of confused about the idea of the Silver Surfer kind of not really doing what their master had asked him to do. But you didn't have Galactus call back his heralds, and you have all four of them leave just like that. But right after you have the heralds of Galactus leave, you then have our heroes be called up by S.H.I.E.L.D. And so you have our heroes head over to the helicarrier. Now, this begins the process of the actual crossover. So the Fantastic Four are being confronted by Nick Fury and also the Avengers. And so you do have Nick Fury say like, hey guys, listen, this room right here, it handles space problems. And we kind of find out that you had S.H.I.E.L.D. detected the spacecraft that Galactus used as a way to travel across the universe. And apparently he had just passed the moon. He's right outside the Earth space at the moment. And so you had Nick go ahead and sent out these probes to kind of get a good idea of what they're looking at. Now, most of their probes do get destroyed, except for one. And so it's now our heroes getting their first look at the spacecraft that belongs to Galactus. Now, on the actual spacecraft, we do pick up with the Heralds of Galactus meeting up with, well, Galactus. And this is Galactus saying that he feels like it's officially time to begin the process of consuming the Earth. Now, for the Silver Surfer, he wants to have a conversation with Galactus, possibly convince him to leave Earth alone. But again, earlier we saw that for Galactus, the Earth right now is holding a lot of energy that he would love to consume. And so, unfortunately, he tells Surfer, no, let's go ahead and move on with our plans. But getting back over to our heroes, is our heroes right now listening to Reed Richard? Because for Reed, he's kind of telling the heroes what he realized throughout the entire series. The whole idea of all these things being connected. The Silver Surfer, Galactus, the Skrulls, the Inhumans, Mole Man. In some crazy way, all these different things are connected to one another. And so for Reed, as he goes on with his speech, that is when S.H.I.E.L.D. is then informed about some kind of new device that Galactus had just released. Now, this device is breaking apart into multiple components that will travel across the Earth. And so for our heroes, what they want to do is go to those different locations and try their best to get rid of those components. Now, for Reed, he'll stay behind. And the reason why, because he's going to try his best to create a device that should possibly help our heroes win against Galactus. So this leads into the first team to go after the first component that did crash land in the Himalayas by Firelord putting it there. Now, the first team is the Human Torch and the Inhumans. Now, this makes a lot of sense. And the reason why, because as we all know, for Johnny Storm, he's madly in love with Crystal, but also he wants to help out the Inhumans. Now, here's the thing, because Firelord is actually a very strong opponent. And even though you do have the Human Torch there, when it comes to Firelord, his powers are completely different from the Human Torch. So unfortunately for Johnny, he's not really able to do anything to Firelord, but Firelord can't. Now, you do have Firelord kind of tell us that the Inhumans should not be trying to attack him because he is a herald of Galactus. And let's not forget, when it came to the Inhumans, they looked at Galactus and his heralds as pantheons, as gods. And so you have Firelord say like, hey, you can't attack me because, as you all know, once the Earth is consumed, your energy, your souls will go into your great god, better known as Galactus. And so now the question is, do the Inhumans attack Firelord to save the Earth or not do anything because of their culture? But you have Black Bolt choose the idea of saving the planet. And so for Black Bolt, he does attack the component that Firelord had placed down. Now, here's the problem though, because this component is storing a lot of energy. So with the idea of our heroes trying to get rid of it, of course, it begins to blow up. And so we're kind of left to believe of the idea that, well, the Inhumans plus the Human Torch had just died. Now, the second team will be the Avengers, and they went over to Monster Island. And the reason why, because Plasma, the other herald of Galactus, well, she had placed her component right on Monster Island. So you do have our heroes arrive there and try their best to get rid of it. The problem is, it's our heroes fighting against Plasma, but also fighting against Mole Man, because Monster Island is Mole Man's home. Now, while you do have our heroes being able to fight against both Plasma and also Mole Man, the component has been activated. And so you have Namor go ahead and say, you know what? Let me sacrifice my life as a way to save the world. And so you have Namor take the component into the depths of a trench nearby, hoping the water pressure will be strong enough to just go ahead and destroy the component, but also making sure the explosion does not hit our heroes nor Monster Island. Now, for the surviving heroes, they do go back over to New York, except when they do, they're now seeing S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to fight against Galactus, which honestly is a bad idea, but they're trying. And you have Nick trying to use the helicarrier as a way to attack Galactus with all the weapons on the helicarrier. But you have Galactus take one shot, and just like that, the helicarrier is now about to blow up. And the reason why? Because of the reactor core. And so you have Nick tell all of his agents to get the heck out of there. Because for Nick, what he's going to do now is pilot the helicarrier over to Galactus, hoping that when the reactor core blows up, it might do some serious damage to Galactus or possibly stop him, but also his devices as well. And so for our heroes, unfortunately, they have to watch Nick Fury give up his life to hopefully save the world. And so just like that, there is an explosion. Except for Nick Fury, his plan does not work at all because you have Galactus survive the explosion, but you didn't have Galactus use the metal on the different skyscrapers around him to repair the damage done to his devices that Nick Fury had tried to blow up. So technically, Nick's plan had completely failed. And so for our heroes, they're kind of like, okay, we got to retreat right now because technically we're losing this battle. We got to find a way to stop this guy. And so this kind of leads into our heroes having a meeting, right? Now, when our heroes do have this meeting, it's really more of Reed trying to re-explain everything to us again. Like, hey, you know, those components out there, they are technically being used as a way to kind of get the Earth ready for Galactus to consume. Now, once you do have our heroes learn that lesson right there, we also learn here that for Reed, he had created this device that should allow our heroes to fight against the cosmic beings, like nullify their cosmic attacks. Now, you do have Ben Grimm go ahead and put on the device, but while you do have our heroes talking to one another, two things happen. The first is that you have Susan find out that Johnny is dead. But now our heroes are once again attacked by Terrax. Now for our heroes, they're really able to take care of Terrax very easily now, thanks to Ben Grimm's device. Sorry, Reed Richards' device, not Ben Grimm's device. But with Terrax being handled, you then have our heroes shift their focus onto taking out the main device that Galactus is currently using. The problem is that all their different weapons are not really working when it comes to trying to get rid of it. Now, the last few pages of the storyline, man, it's really rough for our heroes because you have Ben Grimm say, you know what, let me go ahead and use the device that Reed gave me and absorb the energy of Galactus. The problem is that you have Galactus go ahead and take all the energy that Ben Grimm had absorbed from Terrax, but also Ben Grimm's cosmic energy as well, turning him back into a regular human, but also knocking him out and Thor out as well. Just like that in a matter of seconds. That's not even the rough part. The rough part is that you have Black Panther and also Ben Grimm be killed off by Terrax in a matter of seconds. Now things get even worse because you didn't have Terrax say like, oh, humans, you're wrong. You see, you thought there were only 3 components that were placed across the Earth. There was a 4th one. There is another Herald of Galactus, and that would be Airwalker. Now you do have Terrax say, you know what, it's now time for me to kill off the rest of the heroes. But you do have the Silver Surfer try to step in and stop Terrax. And this leads into the final moments of this storyline, the final moments of the Earth. Yes, you heard that right, because when it comes to our heroes, they're trying to regroup, but you didn't have Dr. Doom arrive. Now for Dr. Doom, he's still trying his best to absorb the energy of somewhat cosmic powers. So of course, he goes over to Galactus, and Galactus sends him flying the other direction in like a matter of seconds. The problem is that it distracted Reed long enough to allow Galactus the ability to turn on his machine. And so just like that, the entire Earth was just consumed by Galactus. Now, at the very last second, you have Dr. Doom go back in time. But the book ends on that note, and that was just the first chapter of the storyline. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into more Heroes Reunited. And we do pick up with part 2. Now, guys, just in case you're kind of wondering, like, why in the world I'm doing like 4 different videos for Heroes Reunited, is because each issue is like 40 to 45 pages long. So it's pretty long enough for us to do a video for each one of these. But also kind of gives me a small break when it comes to recording all these different storylines that I do in a short period of time. But anyways, getting back into Heroes Reborn Part 2. As you all know, at the ending of Part 1, we saw that Galactus was able to destroy the Earth. Like, he consumed it. So it's kind of like the heroes are officially dead, right? But now we have to dive into Avengers issue number 12, part 2 of the storyline. And matter of fact, as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we pick up in the past. We pick up the Avengers right now, giving the fake Thor a funeral. As you all know, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it was our heroes in the main Marvel universe transported into a brand new reality, but reborn in that brand new reality, except for Thor. For some strange reason, most likely because he's a god, when it came to Thor, he was not reborn in the Heroes Reborn reality. There was a fake Thor at first, and so we were kind of left to believe it was our original Thor, but it wasn't. And then out of nowhere, our Thor appeared in this reality. Now, the fake Thor died in a big battle against Loki. So right now, it's our hero saying goodbye to the fake Thor for once and for all. But right after you have our heroes get done with the funeral, well, that is when you have Nick Fury get a call from one of his agents. Now, this guy is warning the Avengers, warning Nick like, hey, Galactus is coming. His heralds, they're killers. And matter of fact, they trashed my warp drive. Like, I'm gonna die as soon as I arrive back on Earth. But I want to tell you right now, y'all gotta get ready for Galactus. But the thing is, right after that message, that agent, his spacecraft, it flies right through the helicarrier into the Earth. Now, of course, the helicarrier did survive, but now as our heroes kind of wondering like, what the heck is Galactus? Because right now, this storyline is in the past. But right after that, you did have our heroes be confronted by Doctor Doom. Now, this is Doctor Doom from the future, from part 1. Because remember, at the end of part 1, Galactus was able to consume the Earth. But Doctor Doom was able to time travel back in time. And so now all we're seeing is Doctor Doom trying to warn the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, what's about to come. Here comes Galactus. He says, listen, what you have to do is get all types of missiles ready and use those missiles to hopefully kill off the heralds. But also the heralds, they're bringing devices to plant into the Earth. You must go out of your way to destroy the devices before they're able to be planted into the actual Earth. And then you have Doctor Doom leave. Now, for our heroes, they believe Doctor Doom, but mainly because, well, one of Nick's S.H.I.E.L.D. agents just crashed back on Earth and said Galactus is on his way. And so because of that, bam, Nick is on the game. Now for Doctor Doom, he knows the heralds have to go. They're really powerful. And so for Doctor Doom, what he's going to do is use missiles as a way to kill off the heralds. He also knows the Avengers are the Fantastic Four. They will try their best to fight against the heralds. And so for Doctor Doom, what he wants to do is use the missiles to kill off the heralds, and most likely it'll kill off the heroes as well. And honestly, for Doctor Doom, that'll be okay. And the reason why, because then everyone will be out of his way to allow him to rule over the Earth. And for Nick Fury, this man is already on the game plan when it comes to figuring out how to stop Galactus. He says, hey guys, listen, we got 3 locations where the heralds might appear with their devices. And so what he did was he already called up 3 different teams to handle these problems. The Fantastic Four, they're going to one location. The Avengers, a different location. The Hulk, the third location. Now the Wasp and also Hank Pym, they stay behind because for Hank Pym, he has to show Wanda something very important. And that would be the Vision. And we do learn here that this is a new body that Hank Pym had created for the Vision. But also, when it came to Hank Pym, when he was inside the body of the Vision in the earlier storyline, you had Hank pull out a special chip. That special chip held all the memories of the Vision in that one single chip. So of course, when you have Hank plug that chip in the new body of the Vision, he remembers everything from the past. So now our heroes have another Avenger on their side to help out with this situation. But now we have to switch over to the Fantastic Four. Now, when they arrive at Moscow, they find the first herald of Galactus. And of course, it would be the Silver Surfer, who's right now trying to plant the device into the Earth. Here's the thing, because for our heroes, they say the Silver Surfer in a previous storyline. But also, let's not forget, in the last chapter, when it came to the Silver Surfer, he had a change of heart when it came to the idea of Galactus trying to consume the Earth. But in this chapter, he's kind of like, hey, listen, I gotta do what my master tells me to do, which means if I have to fight against you guys, I will fight against you guys to allow Galactus to consume your planet. But let's not forget that Doctor Doom is watching this battle. And so for Doctor Doom, he's kind of like, cool, this is perfect because now I'm going to use some of my missiles to hopefully get rid of the Silver Surfer, but also his device. But at the same time, I can kill off the Fantastic Four all in one single blow. But getting back over to the battle with our heroes, they're still fighting against the Silver Surfer. But here's the thing, because you do have Reed Richards. Man, this dude got a plan like always. You see, for Reed, he brought this device that allows him the ability to absorb energy and then give that energy over to somebody else. Like, for example, cosmic energy. He absorbed the energy of the Silver Surfer and gave that energy over to Johnny Storm, making Johnny even stronger than he was earlier, but allowing Johnny the ability to go ahead and get rid of the device that was planted by the Silver Surfer. Now, here's the thing, because even though our heroes are now believing the idea that they have begun the process of saving the Earth, you have Reed and the Silver Surfer realize what's about to happen. The missiles are about to drop. The ones that Doctor Doom had fired. And for Susan, she's too weak right now to even try to put up a force field. And so just like that, that entire area got blown up. The Fantastic Four are dead. Now, the Silver Surfer survived. And Doctor Doom, he realized that his plan did not work on that one herald right there. Now we do switch over to the Hulk because the Hulk's right now on his way over to one of the 3 locations out there. Now for the Hulk, he does get some backup. That will be the Vision and also the Scarlet Witch as well. Now we had to switch over to LA, and the reason why, because you have S.H.I.E.L.D. fighting against the 3rd Herald, and that would be Plasma. Now for Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., they're trying their best to do whatever they can to stop her, but the problem is that she's just too strong. And matter of fact, Nick gets hit by one of her attacks, and so it does seem like he's going to die. And so just like in the last chapter, you have Nick take the helicarrier and crash it right into Plasma. And the reason why, because the reactor core in the helicarrier is strong enough to, well, kill her off. And so just like that, there goes Plasma off the board. Now, as we do switch over to the 3rd location, the Hulk again, and also Vision, you have the 2 characters fighting against Firelord. Now, technically, Firelord is really able to take the Hulk on, but it's the whole idea of the Hulk and Vision working together to kind of keep Firelord distracted long enough to allow the Vision to grab Firelord's staff and use the staff cosmic power as a way to get rid of the 3rd device. And so just like that, you have our heroes being able to win this battle, it seems like. But once you have the Hulk turn back into Bruce Banner, we get the idea that Firelord attack did some serious damage to the Hulk, and Bruce is on the verge of death. But it's also Bruce realizing that what the heroes are trying to do right now is not going to allow them to win the battle against Galactus, really. But now we have to switch over to the Avengers. Now, when we do, it's really more of us seeing the Avengers fighting against Terrax. Now, for Terrax, he kills off Hawkeye very quick and easy. And I feel kind of bad because I am a Hawkeye fan, but at the same time, like, it's Hawkeye going up against Terrax. Like, it's not a fair battle at all. But either way, you do have the rest of the Avengers trying their best to get rid of Terrax, but also a device that he brought with him as well. Now, for Wasp, she also dies in the middle of the battle as well. And Thor does get hurt by Terrax pretty badly as well too. But you have Thor use his hammer to send Terrax right into the actual device, blowing it up, killing off Terrax. But also, again, it's our heroes believing that they are beginning the process of saving the world against Galactus. Now, for the Silver Surfer, he watched Plasma die, but he also watched Terrax die as well. Now, for Doctor Doom, he wanted to use another set of missiles, but the problem is that those missiles came from Russia. And the problem is that those missiles that he tried to use, they didn't shoot off correctly. They blew up while still being docked. And so, unfortunately, half of Russia just got blown up just like that. Now, when Galactus does arrive into New York City, he's confronted by what's technically left of the Avengers, Thor, Iron Man, and good old Captain America. But the problem is that you have our heroes find out that there is another herald, and that will be Airwalker. But on top of that as well, when it comes to this herald, he has another device. And matter of fact, more devices are being planted across the world to begin the process of allowing Galactus to consume the Earth. And for the Avengers, they got blasted pretty hard by Airwalker. So unfortunately, they have to retreat back over to Avengers Mansion. Now, once you do have the Avengers get back over to Avengers Mansion, they're then confronted by Vision, Scarlet Witch, Bruce Banner, Hank Pym, and Doctor Doom. Now, for Bruce Banner, the man got a plan. He said, hey, listen, we can't stop Galactus. The Earth is going to die, but let's go out with a bang. Let's go ahead and get rid of Galactus as well. And so what Bruce is saying is use the Gamma Core over at Avengers Island. Because remember, in an earlier storyline, when it came to the Gamma Core, it was kind of like this hole in space and time, pulling in different characters from different realities or different points in time. And so for our heroes, they believe if they go out of their way to destroy the Gamma Core, it should kill off the Earth, but also kill off Galactus as well. Now for Doctor Doom, he does not go with them at all because the Doctor Doom, what they're trying to do is completely crazy. And so for Doctor Doom, he leaves to once again try to time travel. Now, for the heroes, they go over to Avengers Island, except when they do arrive at Avengers Island, you have our heroes go over to the Gamma Core. When they do, they're then confronted by the Silver Surfer. Now, for our heroes, they're kind of confused right now because they know that this man is a herald of Galactus, but it's him saying like, I've been watching you guys and I realized something, that I learned something from you guys. The idea of compassion, the idea of hope, the sorrow. Like I learned that basically this is completely wrong. And now I want to help you guys to save not this world because this world is going to die, but at least stop Galactus to save other worlds out there in the universe. And so you had a surfer being able to heal up Thor. Once he does that, you have our heroes attack all together, and that destroys the Gamma Core, ripping a hole in space and time. With that happening, of course, that means the Earth is gone just like that. Galactus gone just like that. Once again, the Earth has been destroyed in this storyline. The only thing left out there floating is Thor's hammer. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Heroes Reunited, we do pick up with part 3, and part 3 takes place in Iron Man issue number 12 in the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, just in case you're kind of like getting into our coverage over Heroes Reunited, it's a whole storyline that took place in the Heroes Reborn reality. You know, the reality where in late 1990s, you had a few characters that were no longer selling books, and so when it came to Marvel Comics, they pushed those characters into a brand new reality to kind of give them a fresh start over. There were some old creators that were still popular in the 1990s, kind of hoping it would bring life back into those characters. And so when it came to Heroes Reborn, every like 6th issue, they would have a crossover. And this was the second one, better known as Heroes Reunited, where Galactus is trying to consume the Earth. And every single time the heroes try their best to stop Galactus, they fail. fail. But every single time they do fail, it's Doctor Doom going back in time with what he learned to hopefully figure out, like, how can they save the world? How can they stop Galactus? And matter of fact, when it came to our first video over Heroes Reunited, it was Doctor Doom being confronted by a future version of himself. And that right there kicked off what to me calls a time loop. Like, it's just Doctor Doom constantly going back in time over and over again until he is able to find a way to stop Galactus. Now, for me personally, I kind of like this chapter a tad bit, and the reason why, because it brings in characters we did not see in the first two chapters, and that would be She-Hulk and Doc Samson, because in our last Iron Man video, you had Tony and Reed be confronted by the Hulkbusters, because in our last video, we had talked about the idea that our three Hulk characters are somewhat being affected by the gamma virus in their bodies. And so when it came to Bruce and Doc Samson, they kind of believe a blood transfusion could possibly help them, but Bruce turned to Hulk, so he began to freak out. You had She-Hulk step in. Of course, that led to her becoming the She-Hulk in this reality. Either way, for these three characters, they're right now the Hulkbusters in the Heroes Reborn reality. Now, this kind of brings up a conversation for Reed and Tony. Because for Reed and Tony, they kind of realize there's something off about this reality. And for me personally, this is a callback to our earlier videos where you had Reed and Tony kind of being able to get small glimpses of the main Marvel universe, but not getting the idea that they're from that universe, but they were pushed into a different reality. And so for Reed and Tony, they have been trying their best to figure out what's going on with their reality, because again, they all got powers. And it's really weird how one particular friend group is able to get powers, every single member of that friend group. But you didn't have our heroes be alerted about Galactus and his heralds coming to, well, the planet Earth. Now, when it comes to Tony, in our last video, him and Doctor Doom, they had time traveled. And while time traveling, they saw the spacecraft. And so for Tony, he definitely knows about that spacecraft. He definitely knows there's something special about it. But you do have Reed Richards be the first one to try to make contact with the Heralds of Galactus. And he tells Tony in the Hulkbusters, like, you guys are technically the backup team. Like, if things pop off, y'all come in then. Now, when it comes to Tony, one of the things I do want to point out that in the first issue of this series, we had technically learned that he was heartless, that he was emotionless. And the reason why, because, well, he watched one of his close friends die while testing out an armor that him and his best friend had created. But over time, with him being Iron Man, he has turned into this person who can show that he does have emotions, that he does have a heart. And so for Doc Samson, he's kind of happy about the idea of seeing Tony like that. But you didn't have Tony get a call about something else. So of course he has to leave. Now for the Hulkbusters, they believe it's actual business, but in reality it's something, well, personal. Because in the earlier video, we had saw that Happy Hogan got like seriously injured. Now, in an earlier video, I kind of had mentioned that Happy Hogan had died, but that's not the actual case there. You see, Happy Hogan survived. And the thing was, in the artwork in that last video I recorded, I really thought Happy Hogan died, but that's my fault. But in reality, he did survive. So it's Tony right now, seeing how Happy he is at the hospital. But while you have Tony, Pepper, and Happy just hanging out at the hospital, you have Doctor Doom arrive. Now, when Doctor Doom does arrive, this is Doctor Doom once again trying to save the world by going back in time with the information that he remembers from his last few attempts. And so it's him saying, okay, you know what, Tony, we gotta go. He grabs Tony and they leave. And he makes sure to grab Tony's Iron Man suit as well. Now we do switch over to the Hulkbusters, and they're watching the Fantastic Four fight against the Heralds of Galactus. Now, while they're doing that, I kind of find this a tad bit funny, and the reason why, because in the earlier chapters of the storyline, we saw the Heralds of Galactus take on teams of heroes by themselves, and to see Fantastic Four go one-on-one with these guys is pretty wild to me. I feel like they should be dead by now. But either way, we switch over to Bruce Banner, who's being confronted by Liz. Now, Liz was head of security for Tony Stark's company, but the thing is, when it came to Bruce Banner getting hit with gamma radiation, turning him into, well, the Hulk, for her, it gave her radiation poisoning. She's dying. And so it's her saying goodbye to Bruce Banner. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom and Tony Stark, they're having this conversation where it's Doctor Doom wanting Tony Stark to understand about what happened in the last video we covered. The whole idea of the two characters going throughout time, but in the main Marvel universe. And so it's Doctor Doom saying, like, Tony, you have to realize something, that there's something off about us, about this reality. But it's also Doctor Doom beginning to remember his original past over from the main Marvel universe. Because it's Doctor Doom saying, think back to a year ago. But for him, a year ago was the Onslaught crossover. The whole idea of our heroes fighting against Onslaught and our heroes going into him and being transported over to the Heroes Reborn reality. Now for Tony Stark, he can't believe what he's hearing from Doctor Doom, but it's Doctor Doom saying, like, no, when it came to Onslaught, you grabbed me and pulled me into him, into this reality. It's Doctor Doom beginning to remember. But unfortunately, their conversation ends because you have Nick Fury say, hey guys, listen, I need all hands on deck. So y'all guys are coming over to the helicarrier. And this is more of Nick Fury telling the Avengers, like, hey, listen, so the Fantastic Four, they're dead. Like, they died fighting against the Heralds of Galactus. So, like, it's up to y'all to fight against them, but to also fight against their boss, Galactus, when he arrives. Now, once you have Doctor Doom hears that Reed Richards had died again, that's now twice that Reed Richards had died. It's Doctor Doom saying, like, okay, so, like, I need to work with the Avengers, work with my old colleagues from college like Hank Pym and Tony Stark to find a way to hopefully defeat Galactus and save this world. And so it's now our heroes beginning to move out with their plan. You have all the hard hitters fight against the Heralds of Galactus, while you have all the smart ones stay behind to hopefully make something to save the world. Now, the next few pages for me kind of shows the timeline being changed, because in this timeline, you have our heroes being able to take on the Heralds of Galactus and being able to kill them off. But this time, because they worked as a team, unlike the Fantastic Four, who did one-on-one battles. And so you do have our heroes being able to kill off the different Heralds of Galactus. And so this kind of leads into the ending of the storyline, right? Where we get to that point where it's the heroes using a device that was created by Tony, Hank, Bruce, and also Victor, the ultimate nullifier. And they're kind of hoping it will work against Galactus. The problem is you have Galactus just go ahead and get rid of that device in a matter of seconds. So just like that, our heroes had failed. And so with our heroes failing, it's Doctor Doom realizing he has to go back in time once again to hopefully find a way to stop Galactus. And this leads into the final chapter of Heroes Reunited, which is part 4, Captain America issue number 12. Okay, so it's time for us to go ahead and get back into our coverage over Heroes Reunited. And with that being said, we do pick up the final chapter of this crossover that took place in Captain America issue number 12. Now remember, this storyline does take place over in the Heroes Reborn reality for Marvel Comics. Now, as we all know, that came out of the whole idea of Onslaught, where you had our heroes go into Onslaught but be transported into a different reality, because in the late 1990s, some properties of Marvel Comics were no longer selling, and so they had a great idea to push those characters away in a different reality and give old creators a chance to kind of give those characters a fresh start in a brand new reality, and hoping that it would bring fans back into Marvel Comics for those characters like Iron Man, the Avengers, and Fantastic Four. Anyway, so Heroes Reunited, it's really more about the idea of our heroes trying the best to defeat Galactus. And technically, it's really more about Doctor Doom trying his best to defeat Galactus. And let me explain. You see, when it came to the very beginning of Heroes Reunited, you had Galactus arrive to Earth. When he did, things popped off very quickly, but the Earth was consumed by Galactus. What you've been seen in the earlier chapters is Doctor Doom going back in time every single time he failed to stop Galactus. So now this is his fourth and final attempt. And the reason why it's his fourth and final attempt, because at the end of the last chapter for Doctor Doom, his device that allows him to time travel got damaged. So unfortunately for Doom, he has to get it right here to basically stop Galactus, but to save the world. And so as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we really do pick up with Rebecca Barnes. Now, Rebecca Barnes is the Bucky of this reality, the Bucky of the 1990s for this reality. Now, here's the thing, because when it comes to Rebecca Barnes, there's so much about this character that comes out later on in later books down the road when it comes to Marvel Comics. So like, she's a very intriguing character for the overall idea of Heroes Reborn. And you see what I mean if we ever come back to this reality. But for Rebecca Barnes, when she does get home, she's confronted by Doctor Doom. Now, for me personally, I would freak out as well. But the reason why you have Doctor Doom there for, you see, for Doctor Doom, he was able to access the shield files. And with him doing that, he learned that Rebecca is technically a chronal anomaly. She should not exist at all. And that right there continues the whole idea that Doctor Doom is slowly realizing that there's something off about this reality. The possibility that this reality should not even exist at all. And that right there is pretty important. But either way, for Doctor Doom, he feels like he should go ahead and just kill her off, because again, she should not even exist at all when it comes to this reality. But you did have Steve Rogers appear. Now, when Steve Rogers does appear, you have both characters just stop in their track. It is not like Doctor Doom and Steve are going to fight. And it's not like Doctor Doom is scared of Steve Rogers. It's more of like, for me personally, it's Doctor Doom remembering that what he's here for. Like, the dude traveled back in time to find a way to stop Galactus. So why should he waste time on Rebecca Barnes when technically he should be focused on finding a way to defeat Galactus? So it's him saying like, you know what? Let me go ahead and get the heroes together to fight against Galactus. Now, here's the thing, because for Doctor Doom, he also drops the hint for Steve Rogers that he is somehow connected to S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, we did learn in the earlier chapters that when it comes to S.H.I.E.L.D., they do work with Tony Stark, but they also work with Doctor Doom as well. And so you then have Doctor Doom begin the process of trying to bring together the heroes of this reality. And the thing is, it's Doctor Doom also realizing that he needs Reed Richards. And for me personally, that is pretty big for Doctor Doom, because for Doom, he realized he needs the help of other scientists like Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards. Hank Pym, to find a way to defeat Galactus. But here's the thing though, because in the earlier chapters, we always saw Fantastic Four die first. And so when it comes to Doctor Doom, he knows that the Heralds of Galactus will fight against Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four will die, and that will hurt their chances to finding a way to defeat Galactus. So you had Doom get the Avengers, they go out there, protect the Fantastic Four, defeat the Heralds of Galactus, and now you have our heroes being able to begin the process of working together to find a way to stop Galactus. Now, for Galactus, he knows that his heralds have basically failed on Earth. Now, when it comes to Galactus, he has 5 heralds, so only 4 of them have failed. Terrax, Firelord, Plasma, and Airwalker. But the Silver Surfer is still around. And the thing is, he's hoping the Silver Surfer will still be able to finish the job, to get the Earth ready for Galactus to consume. Now, for the Silver Surfer, we saw in earlier videos that he kind of hates the idea of Earth being consumed by Galactus because the Fantastic Four has saved him. And so he's beginning to grow when it comes to having emotions. But either way, you do have Galactus order Surfer to go get the Earth ready for consumption. But now we have to shift over to the Knights of the Atomic Round Table. Now, that name was given to that group back in college. And really, everyone involved in that group were basically scientists in some types of ways. Like, for example, you got Tony Stark, you got Hank Pym, Doctor Doom, Bruce Banner, Reed Richards. There was one more character known as Rebel, but he officially died by this point in the Heroes Reborn reality. But all of these characters met back in college, and now it's all of them coming together to figure out how to get rid of Galactus. And the thing is, Bruce Banner has an idea. He's kind of like, hey, let's give Galactus exactly what he wants. And you have everyone freak out like, whoa, what in the world did Bruce Banner just say right now? But now we have to shift back over to Rebecca Barnes. Now, for Rebecca Barnes, it's really more of her at Avengers Mansion alongside with the other heroes. But on her mind at the moment is the whole idea of what Doctor Doom had told her. Like, hey, you should not exist. And so for Rebecca, she wants to know, what does that truly mean? Like, is there a possibility that she should not be around at all when it comes to being in this reality? But you didn't have her be confronted by the Silver Surfer. Now, for the Silver Surfer, even though he's still working for Galactus, he still wants to find a way to help out the humans. And so you had the Silver Surfer tell Rebecca, hey, listen, I have a message. And you need to get this message over to the heroes that Galactus is coming. And when he does arrive, your Earth is going to be consumed. And I'm telling y'all this right now so that you may be able to use your science to find a way off this planet, to take a few people somewhere else, to restart humanity somewhere else. Now, of course, Rebecca, she believes in the heroes. They're going to find a way to stop Galactus, to save this Earth. But for the Silver Surfer, he only came here to give her a message to give over to the other heroes. Now, while he does try to leave, you have her grab onto his board. Now, Steve Rogers sees that she has, of course, grabbed onto the Silver Surfer's board. And this leads into a very sad moment because while you do have Rebecca holding on to the surfer board, you didn't have Galactus appear. When he does appear, you have Galactus hit her with some kind of cosmic energy, having her fall into a body of water. Now, luckily, Steve was around, but for the Silver Surfer, he's kind of like, what did I do? Like, what have my actions brought? Like, if I only came here and did the job that Galactus had asked me to do, there's a possibility that little girl would not got hit by my master's cosmic blast. So you did have Steve Rogers bring her back over to Avengers Mansion. Now, with him doing that, of course, you have all the Avengers, all the heroes seeing what happened to her. And of course, that motivates them even more to find a way to bring down Galactus. Now, right after that, you did have the heroes get one more person on their side, and that would be the Silver Surfer. He's no longer working for Galactus. He will now help the heroes to find a way to bring down his old master. And so you have our heroes give the Silver Surfer the ultimate nullifier. Now, here's the thing, because if anybody ever used this device, you're going to die. It's a major sacrifice that technically has to be done as a way to get rid of Galactus. And so for the Silver Surfer, he agrees to be the one to sacrifice his life to save this planet. And so with the ultimate nullifier, what it's going to do is absorb the energy of our heroes, but also the energy of Galactus, and then continue to feed Galactus until technically he overloads. And so that is their actual plan to defeat Galactus once and for all. And it does really work out for our heroes, where Galactus is truly defeated. Now, with Galactus being gone, you didn't have our heroes go their separate ways, right? Now, for Reed Richards, is him kind of hoping that Doctor Doom will go ahead and switch sides. Like, Doctor Doom will try to reopen the doors that he had locked away in his heart and allow the different people that he made friends with back in college be back in his life once again. But of course, for Doctor Doom, he can't do that. But to go ahead and get into the ending of the storyline, we do switch over to Steve Rogers, right? And so for Steve Rogers, he's currently at the grave at Abraham Wilson. Now, Abraham Wilson was the father to Sam Wilson, who died trying to give Steve back his shield. But you didn't have Steve be confronted by Richard Barnes and Peggy Carter. Now, of course, as we know, Steve should know these characters very well. But the thing is, Steve does not remember them. And this kind of leads into the idea of them, or they were going to, try to give us another origin story for Steve Rogers in this reality. But unfortunately, when it came to Heroes Reborn, it got canceled, and you did have our heroes go back into the main Marvel universe, restoring the original origin of Steve Rogers. But the reason why I'm saying all of this because for Steve, being confronted by Bucky and also Peggy and not knowing them, you didn't have Nick Fury appear. And for Nick Fury, he says, listen, we can't tell you how you know them or when you met them. But it's also Nick Fury saying, like, by the way, what you were told, the whole idea of Truman. Because remember, in the very first story arc for Steve Rogers in this reality, we had learned that he wasn't frozen in time. That technically what happened was, for Steve Rogers, he had a disagreement with the president after World War II because they had dropped the bombs in Japan. And he hated the idea of them doing that. And so what Nick Fury did was he used technology back then to control the mind of Steve Rogers, to make him live different lives throughout the years leading into the 1990s. And so here we are now, it's Nick saying, like, there's a possibility none of that happened, which means how in the world did Steve survive from World War II up to until now? Like, what happened between these 2 points in time? But the thing is, we don't get the chance to learn it here. And so with that being said, okay, so it's time for us to finally wrap up our coverage over the Heroes Reborn reality. As y'all know, when it came to Marvel Comics in the late 1990s, what they did was they basically tried to give some certain characters a fresh start. You see, in the late 1990s, as we all know, Marvel was struggling, and some of their properties were no longer selling. Iron Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four. When it came to Captain America, he was technically selling, but he was also part of that package deal as well. But either way, when it came to Marvel, what they did was they had used Avengers X-Men Onslaught event as a way to push those characters out of the main Marvel universe, but into a different reality, better known as Heroes Reborn, to give those characters a fresh start with old creators that Marvel had brought back. Now, at first, it did seem like everything was going to work out for them, but by the 12th and 13th issue of each series, you didn't have Marvel say, you know what? let's go ahead and take those heroes back over to the main Marvel universe. Now, after reading everything about Heroes Reborn, I can officially say that I don't really hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I felt like it was just okay. For me, the artwork was mostly okay, except for Rob Liefeld's artwork. But hey, that's not really me hating on him. It's just me saying like, maybe, just maybe, I don't have a taste for his artwork. And that's really it. But for me, the biggest issue was the overall storyline. Like at first, all the stories were hitting, but then out of nowhere, they kind of felt like the stories were just all over the place, but at the same time, they were trying their best to connect with one another, and it became a huge mess. Now again, that's just me though, but with the idea of Heroes Reborn, the return, it's nice to see those characters go back into the main Marvel universe. But as we get into the opening pages of Heroes Reborn, The Return, issue number 1, we're really picking up with Reed Richards and Susan Storm. And for me, this makes a lot of sense because these two characters, their son is the reason why they're currently in a different reality at the moment. Because when it came to that Onslaught crossover, you had the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and a few other heroes besides the X-Men and Spider-Man and a few other characters who were, popular at that time, not go into Onslaught. The one who did, they all went into a different reality. And so for the Fantastic Four, they have been living a life in the Heroes Reborn reality like everything is normal. They don't remember their past lives in the main Marvel universe, especially when it comes to their son, Franklin Richards. See, this storyline was the one that established the idea that it was Franklin Richards who had created the Heroes Reborn reality as a way to save his family, but also the other heroes who went into Onslaught to hopefully defeat him. And so to Franklin Richards, he had created the Heroes Reborn reality. The thing is for Franklin, he does not know how to control his abilities. So he did not do it on purpose. It was a complete accident. But for Franklin, he's right now being confronted by Ashima. Now for Ashima, she is this celestial who's right now appearing as a human as a way to communicate with Franklin Richards, to let him know that he does have the ability to bring his family back into this reality, to reach out to them. But the thing is, she also says you have to make a big choice. Now, for this 4-part storyline, that choice is very important when it comes to our heroes coming back into the main Marvel universe. But it's also her kind of hinting at the idea that once he does decide when it comes to that choice, there's a possibility that he might have to leave with her and join the rest of the Celestials. Around this time in Marvel Comics, when it came to Franklin Richards, he was staying with Generation X. Generation X was the 1990s version of the New Mutants, a bunch of kids right now who are trying to learn how to control their abilities, and you had Banshee and also Emma Frost as their teacher. Now, around this time, Marvel Comics, for Franklin, he was classified as a mutant. So for Nathaniel Richards, he decided that his grandson should stay with Generation X. Now, there was a storyline where you had Black Tom attack the school. When he did, you then had Man-Thing being able to grab Franklin and the other members of Generation X. The thing is, for Man-Thing, he saw something going on with Franklin. It's the whole idea that with Man-Thing being like the protector of the nexus of all realities, he kind of saw something special about Franklin and kind of kept him even though the heroes were able to go back home to their school. But now we have to shift over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, he really does give us that example of a hero who was still popular in the 1990s and was not really affected by the Onslaught event, meaning that he did not go over to the Heroes Reborn reality. He was able to stay in the main Marvel universe. But for Spider-Man, it's him right now watching the news about the anniversary of when the heroes had disappeared. Of course, they're talking about the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, because for the heroes in the main Marvel universe, they believe believe the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they had died when it came to going inside Onslaught, not knowing that Franklin Richards had pushed those characters into a different reality. Now, I kind of want to sit down and talk about the Hulk for a moment. And the reason why, because the Hulk is a special character in this whole event. You see, when it came to Bruce Banner and the Hulk, they took down Onslaught. They were really able to beat down on him. Now, the Hulk did pass out, and so you were kind of left to believe at first that the Hulk would not go into the Heroes Reborn reality, but he did. Well, not him. Bruce Banner did. And so you had the Hulk stay behind, but for Bruce Banner, he went into the Heroes Reborn reality where unfortunately he was turned to Hulk all over again in that reality as well. Now we do pick up with this astronomer who's currently just watching this space anomaly make their way over to Earth. Now for this guy, he has no idea what it is just yet, but unfortunately he's not gonna know because when it does crash land, he's killed off. But we do learn that it is Ashima arriving to Earth as a human or appearing as a human as a way to be able to communicate with Franklin Richards. But as we do switch over to Franklin Richards, we kind of get the idea of how powerful he truly is. Because for Franklin Richards, he's holding on to this ball. That ball is the Heroes Reborn reality. And when the ball gets eaten by an alligator, you have Franklin use his powers, technically on accident, to kill off the alligator as a way to get his ball back. The Heroes Reborn reality. Now, this ball begins to show him different images, like for example, images of two different Hulks. The Hulk in the Heroes Reborn reality and the Hulk here in the main Marvel universe. And really, we do get a small glimpse in the other world where you do have Thor and also Ben Grimm fighting against that other Hulk at the moment, the one in the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have that fight going on, you have Franklin being able to see the fight, but only as small images appear on his ball. And he's very confused with the idea of what's exactly happening. But you did have Franklin be confronted by Ashima. Now for Man-Thing, it wants to protect Franklin, but you have Ashima send Man-Thing running away scared, but also on fire as well. But either way, for Ashima, she came there with a purpose. But with Ashima being there in the main Marvel universe talking to Franklin, it begins to affect the Heroes Reborn reality as well, because we do see the Fantastic Four just trying to have lunch together, or really more breakfast. But either way, for Susan, she begins to cry out of nowhere. And it's not like she's sad or anything, just something about her is happening. And that's the idea that the Heroes Reborn reality is about to change forever. Because as we do switch back over to Franklin Richards, who's still with Ashima, it's Ashima right now explaining everything to Franklin like, hey, listen, I'm a Celestial. I'm a very powerful being. Me and my fellow Celestials, we did experiments here on Earth. And of course, it led into you, a creation of a being that has the ability to warp reality, to create life. And that right there is pretty cool and all. But it's also her saying like, let me show you what you did technically on accident. And so she takes Franklin into the Heroes Reborn reality. And with her doing that, it's really more of her saying like, look at what you created. You made this reality. You put your family in this reality. But it's also her saying like, but it has to go. Like, you have an option here. You can say the main Marvel universe Earth, or you can say this Earth that you had created. And so for Franklin, that right there for a young boy is a big thing to ask. Like, you're asking him to decide which world should go. But technically, his family is in the Heroes Reborn reality. And so to close on the first chapter of the storyline, when we do jump over to Reed and Susan, they're laying in bed, but then they're confronted by Franklin Richards. The problem is that they don't remember Franklin at all, really. But for Susan, she kind of does. And here's the reason why, because when our heroes went into the negative zone, they were also able to get like small glimpses of their actual past over in the main Marvel universe. And so for Susan, she's kind of like, I was in this part of the negative zone where I saw myself, a different version of myself that was able to have kids, and they had a son named Franklin, the boy right now that she's currently seeing. And so of course she begins to freak out. But now we have to switch over to Doctor Strange. Now when we do, it's really more of Doctor Strange being confronted by the fake Loki. And the reason why I say the fake Loki, because when it came to Heroes Reborn, most of our heroes were transported into this brand new reality, given new lives in that new reality. But for Thor and Loki, that was not the case. Now, at first, we were kind of left to believe that it was Thor and Loki from the main Marvel universe who were brought into the Heroes Reborn reality at first. But then out of nowhere, you had the real Thor appear. And the real Loki has been hanging out with Doctor Strange in the main Marvel universe. And so we're kind of left to believe that for Franklin Richards, he wasn't really able at first to transport a god into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so what he did was he created fake copies of Loki and Thor in that reality. And so for this Loki, at first, he still somewhat believes that he is the real Loki. But you have Doctor Strange tell him like, nah, like you are not the real Loki. But while you do have the two characters talking to one another, well, that is when Loki freaks out. And the reason why, because something is coming after Loki in his reality. And that would be Ashima. And the reason why she's there right now killing off the fake Loki is because this fake Loki was, of course, being the god of mischief. He had his own plans, and of course, those plans involved both realities. But for Ashima, she made sure that Loki would not be able to meddle with the plans of the Celestials. But now we're able to work our way over to the Fantastic Four. And when we do, it's all of them right now just looking at Franklin Richards. But the problem is that none of them remember who Franklin is because they were given new lives in this brand new reality. Now, technically for Susan, she somewhat does remember Franklin because she saw him out in the negative zone. She saw that other version of herself, technically her original version. But you do have Franklin try his best to explain everything to the Fantastic Four. The problem is that he does mispronounce Celestials, and so with him doing that, unfortunately for Reed and Sue, they don't truly understand what exactly is going on. But you do have Franklin leave. Now, for Susan, she begs Reed to help out Franklin, to bring home their son. Now we do switch over to Spider-Man. Now for Spider-Man, we're technically going to use him as a way to bring the Hulk back into the picture, but also like the idea of what's happening across the nation. All these different natural disasters just popping up left and right across the nation. And that right there is somewhat important because we're going to see a similar thing happening over in the other reality as well. But now focusing on the Hulk, there's a whole idea that when it comes to the Hulk and him being split with Bruce Banner being in the other reality and also Hulk being in this reality, there's some kind of energy he's putting off at the moment. And really, you have the military stepping in, Hercules stepping in, but also the Thunderbolts. Now, the Thunderbolts were created as a way to kind of, watch over the world with the idea of the Avengers no longer being around. But either way, for the Hulk, it's very concerning because he's putting off some type of energy here at the moment. And while you have the Hulk just popping off in the main Marvel universe, over in the Heroes Reborn reality, the Hulk is once again going on a rampage. And you have you're having Thor trying his best to bring down the Hulk. But then out of nowhere, a bunch of magma just pops right out of the ground. So you have Thor trying his best to protect innocent people. But while doing that, the Heroes Reborn Hulk, Bruce Banner Hulk, just disappears. But while you have that going on for Doctor Strange, he does find Franklin Richards' ball. And with him being able to find the ball, it's now him kind of wondering like, what should he do with it? Should he possibly bring the ball over to the Hulk? And speaking of Franklin Richards, who's still in the Heroes Reborn reality with Ashima, it's her telling Franklin, like, you gotta make a choice here. Like, you got two options. You can go ahead and save the Heroes Reborn reality, or you can possibly save the main Marvel Universe reality. But you gotta make a choice here. And the thing is, for Ashima, the way she talks about the beings in both realities, they're like ants to her. They're kind of like small, lesser beings who she should technically not care about. But for Franklin, they are still people who have lives. They're still alive, and he hates the idea of her looking at them as lesser beings. Now, you do have this wild animal appear, and when it does, for Franklin, he feels bad about the animal. He asks Ashima to help heal the animal, which she does, but then right after that, she kills off the creature, and that right there ticks off Franklin Richards a lot. But it also shows how powerful he truly is, because with him being upset, he was able to release an attack to kind of send her back a tad bit. And for Ashima, she can't believe that his attack actually did hurt her somewhat. But then she realized he had disappeared. But getting back over to the Fantastic Four over in the main Marvel Universe, they're also kind of showing us that things are popping off not just on Earth, but also in space as well, because you have two fireballs just making their way over to the Earth. Now, for Susan, Ben, and Reed, really all the heroes on Earth, they just got done with Galactus. So now you are possibly talking about the idea of some more space problems popping up. But you didn't have our heroes realize that earlier for Franklin, he had mispronounced the idea of the word celestials. And so once you have our heroes understand what he meant by it, they're kind of like, okay, we got some work to do here. Now, getting back over to Peter Parker, you have Peter Parker arrive at the scene where the Hulk is at right now, fighting against Hercules, the military, but also fighting against the Thunderbolts as well. Now, when it comes to Spider-Man, when he does arrive there, he realized that the rain has picked up there where the entire area is being flooded. And you have the Hulk trying his best to keep the water away from him. But as soon as you have Spider-Man being able to land right on the Hulk, you have Doctor Strange fly by. When he flies by, he has that ball in his hand. And of course, that means our two heroes, the Hulk and Spider-Man, are easily transported into the Heroes Reborn reality. But while you have the Hulk and also Spider-Man being transported into the Heroes Reborn reality, is also Ashima telling Franklin, like, if he does not choose when it comes to, which Earth to save, the Celestials will choose for him. And if they choose, then both Earths are going to be completely wiped out. Now, when the Hulk and Spider-Man do arrive in the Heroes Reborn reality, they're then confronted by Bruce Banner, who's currently the Hulk at the moment. And so as we do dive into the third chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with Ashima looking for Franklin, who was able to get away from her. Except when she does find Franklin, he fell down a cliff. And it does seem like that Franklin Richards is officially dead. But now we have to switch back over to the Fantastic Four. Now, when we do, it's really more of us picking up with the Fantastic Four, really more Reed working with Tony Stark. Now, when it came to Reed Richards in this reality, he knew that Tony Stark was Iron Man. The whole idea of Iron Man being Tony Stark's bodyguard, Reed did not fall for it, but it's really now Reed trying to figure out what exactly is going on when it comes to their Earth. And so for Tony, he brought some rock samples from deep inside the Earth to kind of see how old the Earth truly is. Now for Reed Richards and Tony, they can't find anything abnormal about it just yet. But for Tony, he'll be going into the negative zone to run a few more tests on the rock samples. Now, for Reed, he also tells us, the readers, the two fireballs that's heading over to the Heroes Reborn Earth, they sped up. So at first, they may had a few weeks, but now they only have like a few days before the fireballs do hit the Earth. But now we have to switch back over to the idea of having two Hulks fight against one another. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fighting against one another, you have our Hulk. The one from the main Marvel universe recognized that the other Hulk is Bruce Banner, but in this reality, unfortunately, he had turned to the Hulk once again. Now, for the Hulk, while being in the main Marvel universe, he kind of felt like he was incomplete, that he was missing his other half, but he could not understand why he felt like that. Now he understands why he did, because he didn't have Bruce Banner in his mind with him in the last year. And so now seeing Bruce Banner as the Hulk and kind of realizing what he was supposedly missing is him being happy about the idea of moving on, but also wanting to continue to fight against Bruce Banner, who had hulked out, to see who would technically win, but to also get rid of him. Now, while you do have the two Hulks fall off the bridge and fall into a river, you didn't have Spider-Man be confronted by the Avengers. And really, this is pretty huge because for Spider-Man, he believed that the Avengers were dead, but to see them alive in this other reality, he's kind of like, wait a second, I thought you guys were dead. But as we do switch over to Ashima, it's her right now standing over the dead body of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have the other Celestials tell her, like, you need to bring him back to life, where of course she does go out of her way to bring him back to life. Except when she does that, it's also her now seeing that he is connected to all the different humans on the main Marvel universe Earth. And so when she does touch him, she begins to get a crash course of the whole idea of the human race. And really, it kind of gives her emotions. Like she begins to understand what it feels like to be a human. And so once she does recover Franklin and he wakes up and asks her, like, can I now go see my mom and dad? She says yes. Now, as we do switch back over to the Hulks, you do have something, or really someone out of nowhere in this aircraft, grab both Hulks and begin to take them away. Now, before we do learn like what exactly is going on, we have to jump back over to the Fantastic Four, because you do have Tony Stark being able to come back from the negative zone. And when he does, the rock samples that he had collected, they basically told him like the Earth is only a year old. And that can't be true because, well, our heroes, they're way older than a year old. And so for our heroes, they begin to freak out. But then they're confronted by Franklin Richards, who has returned to them. Now, as we do switch back over to Spider-Man and also the Avengers and also, well, the Hulks, we do learn it was Dr. Doom who had grabbed the Hulks, because it's Reed Richards saying, I need all hands on deck. Like, I need Dr. Doom here, Tony Stark here, Hank Pym here, Bruce Banner. Like, we need all hands on deck to figure out how to save the world. And so for Dr. Doom, him also telling us that when it comes to the Hulks, that they're leaking some sort of transdimensional energy. So of course, it's the whole idea that you have Bruce and Hulk being in the same body, but with Bruce going into the other reality and the Hulk staying behind, you now have the Hulk kind of leaking out that energy. Now, for a brief moment, we do switch over to the sidekicks of Captain America. That'd be Falcon and also Bucky. Now, for those two characters just out there right now trying to handle some business out in the streets. The problem is that you didn't have those two characters look up in the sky. They see something. And so to close on the third chapter of the storyline, you do have Fantastic Four, really all the heroes coming together, and really more Reed kind of catching everybody up with what Ashima had basically explained to the heroes. But here's the thing, because while you do have our heroes trying their best to figure out like what is their next move, they hear all these screams coming outside from the city. And when you have our heroes look up in the sky, what they see is Celestial, who has now decided what to do when it comes to Franklin's reality that he had created. So as we dive into the final chapter of the storyline, we're really picking up with the idea of our heroes all gathering at the Baxter building, because now it's time for them to go ahead and just head back over to the main Marvel universe by using the vessel that Doctor Doom had used earlier in this storyline. Now, for Doctor Doom, Reed, Tony Stark, and Bruce Banner, they kind of agree on the idea of working together to find a way to save this reality as well, but also still going back over to the main Marvel universe. But now we have to switch over to Captain America. Now, when we do, is him taking Falcon, because Falcon is the same one we had back in the main Marvel universe, but of course, he now has to go back home to the main Marvel universe. But for Bucky, she can't go. And the reason why, because she was not from the main Marvel universe. She was created in this reality. And so she does not understand why Steve and also Sam get the chance to leave, but she can't go with them. And the thing is, she has built a friendship with Steve Rogers. As we do switch back over to our heroes, is our heroes now telling Ashima like they don't like the idea of the possibility of this world dying. And so it's them saying like, yeah, we'll go back to the main Marvel universe, but at the same time, we want to make sure that this world sticks around. Now, she says no, because again, the Celestials said Franklin has to choose one of the worlds. He chose this one to get rid of, which means that if you guys try to back out of your word, then that means both worlds are going to be destroyed. Now, it's also her informing the heroes that she does plan on taking Franklin right after they do arrive back in the main Marvel universe. But because you do have all the heroes coming together and they all have different personality, but all have the same purpose, the idea of seeing this world survive, for Ashima, she does change her mind. But at the same time, when she looks at Franklin, that really makes her change her mind, seeing him. Because earlier, while she touched him, she was able to get a crash course on what it's like to be a human. And so for Ashima, she's down with the idea of letting this world survive. But either way, the heroes still must go back home. Now, the question is, where is Tony Stark? And for Tony, he has to say goodbye to Pepper Potts, because in this reality, this was not the original Pepper. And technically, we already knew that because, again, she was not there when it came to the big battle against Onslaught. It was Franklin who had created her just for this reality. And so for Tony, it's him saying goodbye, but also him saying like, I love you, but I gotta go. And so this leads into the moment where you do have our heroes begin to make their journey back over to the main Marvel universe. Now, we do learn that they have to travel through this reality's version of the negative zone. And the reason why, because there are actual borders at the end of the negative zone. The end borders of the zone is where Franklin Imagination ends. And so once they're able to pass those borders, they'll then be able to go back into the main Marvel universe. Now, for Ashima, she does leave. As a matter of fact, she does get rid of her human form. But while she's leaving, for our heroes, they believe that they're going to make it back there and everything right now is going very smooth. Except that is when Doctor Doom does, well, Doctor Doom things. Because for Doctor Doom, what he wanted to do was siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. And the reason why? Because then he could use that energy to become a god, to rule over the Heroes Reborn world, but to also go after the Celestials as well. Because he believes with Franklin powers in his, he should be able to bring down the Celestials if he's able to siphon off the energy of Franklin Richards. Now, you do have Thor get in the way. And with Thor getting in the way, you do have those two heroes kind of get lost in the journey where we don't know truthfully where they go to in the storyline. Now, when it comes to Doctor Doom, he does get transported back into the Heroes Reborn reality. And so with that happening, it does lead into another storyline down the road where he does rule over the Heroes Reborn Earth for a brief moment. But this does kind of lead into the ending of Heroes Reborn Return, because once you do have our heroes being able to get back to their reality. You didn't have our heroes being able to remember everything they had forgotten about when they left the original Marvel universe. Now, for our heroes, they will kind of end up in different parts of the world. Like, for example, I think Steve Rogers does end up in Tokyo or Japan, or somewhere in Japan. But while you do have Bruce Banner arrive back in this reality alongside with the Hulk, you do have the two characters being able to come back together as one. Now we also learn here that with Ashima basically being able to save both the realities, she did return into her original celestial form. But unfortunately, she's now in this eternal slumber forever. And so for Bucky and the other people out in the Heroes Reborn reality, they get the chance to see the reality continue on. But for our heroes, they're now back in the main Marvel universe. Now, I'm kind of thinking about the idea of us kind of covering just some stories that took place after Heroes Reborn to kind of see how the heroes try to adjust to the idea of coming back into the main Marvel universe. But with that being said, guys, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. See you next time, guys. Later.